I'd like to call this evening's Corcoran Planning Commission meeting to order. Attendance, Brumman.
Here.
Lind.
Here.
Lanterman here. Kazicki.
Here.
And I'm sorry, Peter, how do I pronounce your last name?
Hargreaves.
Hargreaves. Thank you. So we have enough here. I would ask you all to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we dig into tonight's material, we do have two new planning commissioners. And if you could just take a moment and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Cecilia Kazicki. My husband and I built a home here 37 years ago now, and over on Hop County Road 19 in Strahler Farmsteads. We've got a 5-acre lot over there. I just retired recently from a job at SRF Consulting Group. I worked there for 23 years. I was a graphic design manager and worked with a lot of engineers and planners and designers. So got kind of an interest in that type of thing and decided to check out the city council or the city planning commission.
My name is Peter Hargreaves. I'm a practicing architect. I got registered in 1986. And I'm a recent transplant from the Washington, D.C. area.
Thank you. And we do appreciate your commitment and your volunteer time to the city of Corcoran. So thank you. Commissioners and staff, are there any amendments to tonight's agenda?
Mr. Chair, staff would like to remove item 8AI, the commercial industrial update discussion. We are anticipating additional work direction from council in the next couple of meetings. And so that discussion will be reserved for potentially April, maybe May.
Okay, do we need a motion to remove that? No?
It would just be a part, I think, of the motion to approve the agenda.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner, did you have a comment?
I did. So I'd like to make a recommendation perhaps for next month's agenda. Where would this be the time to do so? Or when would be the right time to do so?
I'm sorry, to do what about next month's agenda?
I'd like to add a topic for a future month
Okay,
to perhaps propose an amendment around public notice for proposed PUD applications. And I say that because I think in our last experience with Hope Community Church and just the impact on the community that had, and I know the neighborhood meeting is required. We had good participation here from residents, but I'd like to see if we can propose an amendment for perhaps broadening that scale, whether that be through signage or additional mailers, but driving additional visibility to the public about when those hearings and open forums will be.
So typically, the practice has been for priorities to be forwarded to council, and then council weighs in on what is they agree as a priority, and that directs staff time to bring additional topics forward to the planning commission. So I could certainly relay it but typically staff time is supposed to be authorized before we dive too much deeper into a discussion like that.
Okay.
is that something that you can maybe draft a short couple of paragraphs up and submit it to staff?
If that's how Natalie, maybe your staff would like us to handle it, I can, however, the appropriate way to do that is, but I think it's an important thing for us to figure out how to address in the next few months.
So I can follow up with you to see how the council would like us to direct that conversation, because we already have a work plan adopted for 2024. So I'll just go through the process of seeing if we can amend that and how they'd like to have that brought forward, if that's a discussion at a council meeting versus starting the conversation here. So I can follow up with you.
Sounds good.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'll again make my motion to approve the agenda. Can I get a second?
I will again second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I'm now going to open the floor to you folks, and I don't think we're doing Zoom anymore, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm going to open up the floor to the attendees here tonight to participate in the open forum. So this is your opportunity to address us. And but understand that this is only for items that are not already on the agenda. Is there anyone who would like to address anything with us, a topic that is not already scheduled for discussion tonight? Bueller? Anyone? Okay. Thank you. Do I need to close the open forum or we just move along? Okay. Let's see, with respect to the February 1st, 2024 Planning Commission meeting minutes, can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make that motion.
And I will second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I did notice one typo of a resident name. 15, that's all.
And what was that?
Mike Pattison.
Which page is that on?
I'm sorry, page 2. B. Subset 2, number 15. Okay, we'll have that corrected.
Okay, is that it? All right, thank you. Natalie, I don't think I need to close anything. Can we just move right into new business?
Correct.
Okay, and I'm sorry. I know I'm gonna mispronounce this. Can someone here tell me how to pronounce your organization?
Corcoran Center. Corcoran.
Would it be okay? I'm slow. Can I just call it the center?
Yeah.
Is that okay? I don't want to sound disrespectful. but-
It is
Okay.
Corcoran Center.
Okay, I have 9 kids, so big words elude me. Okay, so Natalie, will you present the staff report?
Thank you. So the first public hearing tonight is for, and I've already forgotten, Controlling Center. It is a conditional home occupation license, which we issue through interim use permits. So the applicant, Drupa Rinpoche, and the other property owner is Watai Wakwin. And they are both applicants and request approval of an interim use permit for the conditional home occupation license to allow them to teach meditation and Buddhism classes at their residence 2330 Oakdale Drive. Rinpoche is the Buddhist chaplain of Controlling Center in Minnesota. It is a nonprofit organization. As the chaplain and resident teacher, he is the sole employee. The primary activities of the center are classes on Buddhism and meditation. Classes are free of charge, and the center is dependent upon donation. The applicant also provides counseling services to those seeking spiritual support and bereavement care. Code enforcement first became aware of the center when we received a complaint at the middle of 2023, end of summer of 2023, that there appeared to be a potential place of worship operating at the property. Once staff reached out to the property owner and explained that it was a potential, or that it was a zoning violation to be operating, the applicant immediately ceased in-person classes and moved to an online format to determine and pursue the proper approval processes with the city to allow for in-person classes to resume. So classes have continued, but they've been entirely online. Oh, that's me. I'm next one. Okay. In working, I usually have someone else do it. So in working with the building official and the city attorney, it was determined that this use did not seem to fall under the umbrella term for place of worship. Classes typically have 10 to 15 attendees. Typically, there are 5 to 6 additional cars as many attendees carpool together if they're coming from similar directions. Per the Minnesota Building Code, spaces used for less than 50 people are not classified as an assembly use as a typical church would be. The applicant stated that they consider Kachalik Center to be a center for studies, not a religious institution. The house is not open to the public. Previously, the applicant considered the classes to be open to the public where anyone could attend or invite someone else. However, in understanding the limitations and concerns of the building code and operating within a residential neighborhood, the applicant committed to implementing a pre-registration process for classes in order to manage the number of attendees. So staff compares this use to that of someone teaching a yoga class out of their basement, more so than a formal place of worship facility. This is a zoomed in screenshot of the site plan. What you see is the existing house on the left, and the meditation room is where these classes would be held. It is a large finished recreational room. And then the proof of parking is what's shown. So it does a proposed parking lot, 20 parking spaces. This was actually done at staff's request to show that parking could be accommodated should they need parking regularly for more than 5 to 6 cars. Their current driveway would accommodate 5 to 6 cars on a typical week. However, should they have additional need either documented by the city, or should the applicant determine that they need to have additional parking, we wanted to make sure that there would be enough space to accommodate the anticipated attendees. Worst case scenario, if everyone's driving their own car. So that's the exercise we asked them to do. This is considered proof of parking. They are not proposing moving forward with expanding the driveway at this time. If they were to expand the driveway in the future, they would have to go through an administrative process to have the grading plan thoroughly reviewed, and where the driveway is currently shown to expand, there's a potential wetland, so they would have to go through a wetland delineation. And if there is a wetland, it would have to get wetland impacts approved. So potentially you would actually see this driveway move more north so than west. It might be easier for the applicant if that is needed in the future. So the proposed IUP for the license would allow the following: once a week classes of up to 25 people. The term classes includes meetings or gatherings related to the Corcoran Center or a similar organization, as he is very involved in many foundations. And then Sundays from 10 a.m. to noon would be those once a week classes, or those are currently anticipated. One-on-one counseling services, these are by appointment, Wednesday through Saturday between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. And then larger gatherings of up to 49 people, up to 5 times a year is what's currently allowed in the resolution. The applicant's narrative states larger events would be seldom, perhaps 2 times a year. So this 5 times a year was just a starting point from staff to try to balance a property's owner's right to gather with the fact that this is, there's an organizational use behind it. So no structural alterations are proposed at this time. The residence already has the finished recreational space for the meditation room. And again, the driveway expansion would not be happening at this time. It was the site plan was just for proof of parking should it be needed at a later date. So staff finds that the standards for an IUP can be met with conditions added to the use. So those conditions include that pre-registration for events and classes would be required. Classes can only be up to 25 people once per week. Maximum attendees for larger events capped at 49 people. And then parking must be accommodated on site. It cannot be, overflow parking cannot go onto Oakdale. In the front yard, parking must be on an improved surface per the city code to be able to comply with our parking standards. And then should the city find a documented reason or the applicant determine the expansion of the driveway is needed, they would go through that administrative approval process and potentially wetland approvals. So the last week, staff did become aware that the applicant had a gathering at his house. The applicant hosted a spiritual leader that was visiting from India last week, and it was unrelated to the Corcoran Center. However, an impromptu meeting for a separate foundation was held at the property. So when staff went out to the property and confirmed there were several vehicles that would have been, and that it would have been more in line with the parking anticipated for a larger event as defined in the proposed IUP standards. So the applicant explained to staff that this particular event was one-time unexpected occurrence, things kind of snowballed from what he expected. Additionally, there was some confusion as to, well, if it was not related to his center, how does that work? And I would also say some of the parking, where the parking was occurring, that was just a matter of he hadn't had a chance to read the staff report quite yet to realize that parking couldn't happen in the front yard on grass. So some of that would be resolved by the standards outlined in the IUP. And so the draft resolution also clarifies that the frequency and conditions of approved classes and larger events would apply to similar organizations, just to make it clear that this is all under the same scope, and the applicant does understand that at this time. And then just to provide a little bit of background on interim use permits, because we do have a couple of new commissioners and as well as large attendees today, a large public attendance tonight. So standards can be added and modified in the proposed draft resolution in an effort to ensure the proposed use fits within a residential neighborhood. IUPs have a sunset clause, unlike their counterpart called a conditional use permit, which runs in perpetuity in the land. So the IUP would automatically expire when classes cease. He's no longer holding classes, he's no longer operating the center. Neither applicant lives at the property or the property is sold, so it's not transferable. IUPs are reviewed administratively at least every 3 years to confirm ongoing compliance. And then IUPs can be modified should the city or applicant find a need at a later date. Finally, IUPs can be revoked should conditions of approval be violated. At this time, staff recommends opening the public hearing to take testimony. Staff does recommend approval of the interim use permit granting the license. The planning commission can definitely make changes to the draft resolution. And if they find the denial is more appropriate, then findings of fact should be provided to staff. So we prepare that resolution for the city council.
Great, thank you for that great report, Natalie. Do we need a motion to open the public hearing or no?
No, you open it as the chair. We take a motion to close it.
Okay, well, with that, I'd like to open the public hearing, then, public meeting.
I'm so sorry.
First?
Do we want the applicant to say a few words first? Typically we do it right before the public hearing.
Yeah, that would be fine. And then that way they can hear what you have to say instead of, usually it's the other way around.
Hello, good evening. My name is Tubar, and thank you very, very much for making time to be here. I know in America, time is really precious, but you all have made time to be here. And of course, I didn't want my neighbors this way, but this is the situation. So I'm happy that, you know, the neighbors are here, maybe later I will personal handshake or something. So basically, I wanted to introduce myself. So I came from India. I joined monastery at a very young age. And then I was in monastery for over, I don't know, since 1988. So I studied in monastery over 17, 18 years. I graduated. And then I had the opportunity to travel to Malaysia to do English courses. There I studied English. And then I had the great fortune to do, psychology, bachelor's degree in psychology. So that led me to do master's in positive psychology in America. So that's how I ended up being here. And then I have a friend in monastery who owns this center. So after I graduated, the United States gave me 1 year to gain experience to work. So I came here to work and I found a job at University of Minnesota to do as a researcher. So while here, Rinpoche, my friend asked me, could you please, you know, teach at Kachuling? So that's how I ended up being the resident teacher. So presently, I am a chaplain at North Memorial Hospital. So I'm an intern. So that's about me. So my class is over there. So what happened was this place was given to me. And Kachuling, even though it was established, started in 1997, Kachuling doesn't have its own property. So when I inherited, some kind benefactor offered this place. So I said, that, why don't we use this? Since we have to keep moving from one place to another place, all this. So it's kind of a difficult situation for us. So that's how we started. So I thought that, because this is just my property and I'm not having a big gathering, so I can just teach there. And after COVID, things have changed. Most people prefer to listen from online. So we started the classes and then, we received a letter from city. And then that very moment, we ceased every activity. And then we came here, sought guidance, what to do next. And that's how this application went forward. And I think the recent incident, I think there were quite a number of cars there. I wanted to explain how this happened. It was not a public event. It was not a Kachuling Center's classes, nothing to do with Kachuling. What happened was this year, we started because it's His Holiness 90th year anniversary. So there's an organization, they said, oh, we wanted to organize this great 3-day prayer festival, prayer session, for also to commemorate His Holiness, appreciate His Holiness. It's kind of show gratitude and also for the world peace. So they started having this as 3 days prayer event in New York, in Minnesota, and in California. So when they were coming here, so there was this presiding, what do you call a very prominent monk or lama. So they were looking for a place for the person to stay. So I said that my house is available. So why don't you, let the person stay here? And he came with the entourage, I think 4, so total 5. And then Rinpoche being that prominent Rinpoche, and he has many students. So people started to come to see him. So you will see these people coming in and going out. And then the last day, after the event, they wanted to brief about this 3 days event. And then they also wanted to seek guidance. So the kind of closing advice, what should we do next? So for that, they have other plans. And the Lama said that I'm too tired. Why don't you all come here? And then at the last minute, they say, oh, we were so busy, we are unable to finish the account. Let's first fix the account. So that's when they all came there, first doing all that account. And then the Rinpoche's relatives and those students, since this is the last day, we want to spend the day with Rinpoche. So that's why suddenly so many people came, and that's what it happened. So it was not a public event. I really followed the city's guidelines. So that's what I wanted to explain. And I'm sorry if it has caused you, any nuisance, but I hope we haven't made any loud noises or anything. So that's I want to say, and I really hope you will support me in this application. And I can understand why people are wary about these small things. Sometimes people think, oh, are they a cult or something else? I'm a follower of the Dalai Lama. I think most of you know that who the Dalai Lama is. So there won't be any loud noises or anything. We just have Sunday 2 hours classes. That's all we, yeah. So thank you very much. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if we're ready to open the public hearing, I have 3 comment cards, Mr. Chair, and then unfortunately, we did not have more comment cards prepared for tonight, so we will start with the 3 that we have.
Okay.
And then we'll open it up to additional comments.
Okay, thank you.
So first, I have, I think it's John, is it John Ra? Ram?
And as he's coming up, I see him coming. Could you just run through the guidelines for public comment real quick and just for review, please?
We do ask for remarks to be limited to 5 minutes, in particular, since we have such a large group tonight, we will have to be strict with that limit tonight. And then please start with your name and address for the record. And typically also, if you have comments that have already been stated previously, you can just confirm that that you agree with comments or certain comments that have been stated, and then if you have anything new to add, then that is helpful to help continue the discussion. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is John Ray. I live at 10639 Maple Lane East. And I and my wife Paula are steadfastly against the approval of the proposed resolution and strongly disagree with the staff report agenda 7A specifically mentioned. Specifically, some sections I'm going to leave out in order to maintain time. Part 5A, this section indicates that the approval of the CHO would allow multiple variations of classes and other large events of a non-determined quantity. This can be interpreted as several types of classes.
I'll get it folks.
Thank you.
There we go.
It would be PR 2020 Part 5A. The section indicates the approval of the CHOL would allow multiple variations of classes and other large events of a non-determinate quantity. The nondescript paragraph can be interpreted as several types of classes held weekly, in addition to the large events, which are also not defined as a specific maximum quantity. While 5 is mentioned, no specific maximum is defined. The CHOL is written as it is written, is in fact clear and distinct departure, as well as being in direct contradiction to the previous residents CHOL, a dog grooming business, where CHOL Michelle Browitz PID 061192313002 clearly states in condition number 2, no more than 5 cars or 10 vehicle trips per day are permitted. Therefore, again, the CHOL request should either be denied or modified to comply to the letter with the aforementioned CHOL precedent to bring them into compliance with the city's stated standard for this home. Part 5C, the document states it's not expected that this use will generate nuisance conditions. I disagree with the intent of the statement in that it is their stated intention to hold multiple large events. Most of these events would be described as outdoor events, which would be held during summertime, early summer to fall. That means with a quantity of 5, there would be May, June, July, August, and September. We hold this area very dear and the natural settings in which we reside. But again, the CHOL should be denied. Skipping ahead here. Part 3, zoning and land use. They have demonstrated their intent to grow and expand, excuse me, this business into a large operation, which will require a 20-car parking lot. Firstly, no CHOL approved by this city should have need to accommodate 20 cars. Bulldozing those trees and putting up a parking lot negatively impacts the nature of the neighborhood, as well as removing the sound barrier that shields us from some of the traffic noise on Oakdale. Further, the parking lot has been identified as containing a portion of a larger wetland complex. During heavy wet rains, this would redirect the water right into the adjacent yards and potentially into our basements. We are against the proposed parking lot and formally request that it be removed from any further consideration. Part 4B and C, consideration being made for potential property devaluation of adjacent surrounding properties, and the use currently is about as impactful as a weekly book club or family gathering. I disagree. The history of repeated large gatherings with multiple cars after being told not to by the city, and the further stated intent to hold multiple large events with tents and porta potties in addition to the proposal to put in a 20-car parking lot, excuse me, clearly negate the comparison of a book club or a family gathering. Part 4F, the impact of the neighboring properties shall be considered before issuing a CHOL. I have detailed multiple reasons why this proposal will negatively impact the neighborhood and demonstrated the fact that this, in fact, is not indeed a home-based business, but is in fact, an attempt to create a formal business enterprise leveraging a single-family home. Any one of these points indicate that the CHOL should be denied and the property be used only as a single-family home as was intended. The intent to take a wonderful single-family home and convert it covertly to a major business enterprise of any kind is unacceptable and is not permissible by the city of Corcoran codes. To quote our own mayor, Tom McKee, budgetary and city planning decisions made this year will determine what Corcoran looks like forever. We are at a crucial point in our developmental history. There is no second chance. We do it right or live with the consequences forever. Do we retain our rural charm or become a haphazard patchwork of unchecked development? Corcoran needs to refocus on city planning that's assisted by experts and created with residential consensus.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody, please, folks.
The next speaker we have is Carrie Horton.
Please state your name and your address.
My name's Kari Horton. I live at 10512 Maple Lane with my husband, Mike. A lot of what I say is going to be similar to what John said, but it's from a little different perspective. Anyway, the back corner of our lot shares a common boundary with the Oakdale property, and we have a full view of their backyard from our property. I've lived on Maple Lane for 14 years and in neighboring Greenfield for 19 years. We choose this rural residential setting because we value the peace, safety, space, and privacy that this neighborhood currently provides. We know our Maple Lane neighbors, we respect them, and we look out for each other. It truly is a great single-family home neighborhood, and we've always considered the Oakdale property as part of our neighborhood. This application request is from a well-organized nonprofit that purchased the Oakdale property specifically as the location of their spiritual center. A spiritual center does not sound to me like a home or a residence, nor does it sound like a home-based business. The persons who are part of the center are referred to as members on their website. This is an organized membership group similar to a church, not a home-based business that has customers. The applicant states in his narrative that parking has not been an issue because people tend to carpool, especially given that Oakdale Drive is a fairly long drive out of the city. Does this sound like a neighborhood gathering of friends in a book club? No. Sounds to me like a group of people that live nowhere close to this Oakdale property. In the city code, there is a clause that mentions authorizing and regulating uses for a property which may be beneficial to the general welfare of the community. Whose community are we benefiting by allowing this request? It seems that the community who benefits doesn't even live within the boundaries of Corcoran, but are strangers to our neighborhood. The applicant also states he thinks that the neighboring land uses are mainly farmland. Has he looked in his backyard? Remember, I said we have a full view of their backyard, as do most of the other single-family home properties adjoining the Oakdale property. One of the provisions in the request is that overflow parking will be allowed on the lawn in their backyard. As we sit on our backyard decks enjoying a beautiful summer day, we could be looking at a parking lot instead of the natural partially wooded backyard view. In our neighborhood, we don't invite 25 people that have requested to visit our home via a website who do not live in our neighborhood into our home each and every week to meditate, attend a class, or for any other reason. And we certainly don't invite 49 people over 5 times a year and put up a tent and porta potties. My question to you is, who's going to continue to monitor the misuse of this property? The neighbors, as we already have been doing for you? This organization has not asked for permission or followed city code already. If this application is approved, what is to stop this continued disobedience or ignorance of the code regarding any future expansion or plans? Their erased online history tells us that these classes have been open to the public in the past at other locations without a pre-approval to attend. I don't think the request you're considering today is their end game. Keep in mind that the recently remodeled meditation room, which is part of the no longer existing attached garage in that house, is over 1,100 square feet. That size room alone can hold 100 attendees. This request will definitely negatively impact our neighborhood for all of the above reasons. To maintain the intent and integrity of our rural residential neighborhood, I ask that you deny this request.
Thank you.
Chair Lanterman, may I speak, please?
Yes.
Real quick, folks. Broke the mic. We're gonna be here all night if we're gonna applause and everything else. Our planning commission is listening to every word. We don't need to do that, and it will not be tolerated at city council either. So if you could, I'd really like it if you would step through that, be respectful, go from there. I keep breaking the mic, I'm sorry. A little further, my voice. I'm probably good enough without a microphone. I'm trying a little bit of levity. You guys all have good ideas, good thoughts. This person is requesting something and we're here to listen, but the applause and stuff is not necessary. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council.
Next, we have Arnold Becky.
We,
Voice big like mine.
I was gonna see if.
We're done.
Okay.
All right.
please state your name and your address.
Hi, my name's Arnie Guthrie. I live at 10638 Maple Lane, East Rogers, Minnesota, which is Corcoran. I formally request that the Corcoran Planning Commission reject this approval of IUP or CHOL for Churchilling Center. I met with Natalie Davis. Am I doing something wrong?
Right about there.
Okay. I met with Natalie Davis McCoon on March 4th, 2024, and told her that there were 18 cars at the Kaching site. She said that they cannot do that, and she would look into the matter. She also said they are not allowed to have meetings at this time. I also have concerns about the commercial parking lot of 20 cars and extra emergency parking. I do not think the planning commission should approve at least 50 people at this site for 5 times a year. The Coachling Center said it will provide outdoor tents and portable toilets. This property is a single-family residence on a lot that has serious drainage issues on parts of the property. Our house is directly behind the Coachling Center. A parking lot will make the problem even worse. The Coachling Center claims they are more similar to a yoga class than a place of worship. They also claim to be like a weekly book club and a large family gathering. The Coachling Center also states parking may not be a problem because many members will carpool because of the distance from the cities. They said if more people come, they can park on the lawn. That was written by these people here. The Coachling Center will adversely affect the perception of our neighborhood and potentially our property values. I don't feel Lob Singh Yessi or Lob Singh Yang, 2 different names there, is being honest or truthful about the use of this Coachling Center. Lob Singh claims his name change is a typo. His name is spelled differently on all the documents. This is not a couple of letter misprints. I once again respectfully request that the Planning Commission reject the Coachling Center plan. I have pictures. I have a picture here of when he had 18 cars there, and I went and talked to Natalie, and she went out and talked to him. And I took pictures, and I seen her go out there and talk to these people. They're not following the directions here. That's kind of what I see. So So once again, I respectfully request that the planning commission reject the Coastal Lane center plan. Sorry about this. Oh, all right.
That's okay.
Real quick, couple of things.
Sure, please.
Please address the commission, not others in the audience, including the applicant. Again, we're trying to keep this respectful. The last name was my error. That was not, it was not a typo on the applicant's part. That was completely my error. I simply wrote the name that rhymed with his first name. So that is my fault, just to be clear. I don't want him to be accused of providing false information when it was completely my error. So just to be clear.
Can I make a statement? Am I speaking now?
Briefly, just 1 or 2 minutes, please.
Okay, Marnie Betsky, you know that his name is still double on what you have, for his name's on 2 different places. Written differently, what you're sending to the council.
So there was a revised report that was uploaded last night to the website.
I looked at it, it's still on there. Double
Yeah.
names.
So at this point, what's in front of the applicant or the planning commission tonight is a resolution that says his proper last name, which is Yeshi. So I will make sure that it's corrected for the city council meeting, but again, that was me reading the name incorrectly and typing it incorrectly. That was not a fault of the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more cards?
We have no more card.
Okay. Well, hold on. Are there any other members here, any other residents here tonight that would like an opportunity to address the planning commission? I saw a hand in the back, please. Nope, her. Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just again, repeating what was said, you can say agree, and then if you have something new to add, or like I said, we'll be here all night. Okay? Name and address.
Hi, my name is Molly Canor. I live at 10500 Maple Lane. We are to the west of the property and we share that property line. My husband and I moved out with our kids 3 years ago from New Hope. And we wanted the bigger space and just to raise a family in a more rural area. We have a 5-year-old boy and an 8-month-old daughter, and I'm not comfortable with a business of any kind in my backyard. With the potential of strangers coming into the neighborhood, I feel like it's a safety concern. Possibly, the same thing about the larger gatherings. I'm not comfortable with that. That increases the number of people coming into the neighborhood and the number of cars. And again, kids and cars, it's a safety thing. We're right there. We see everything that goes on. I'm just not comfortable as a parent with any type of business in my backyard. I think businesses like this are great, but not in a residential neighborhood. Not when we moved out here to get away from that. In New Hope, I could see the railroad tracks. I could see all houses just a block away from us. I could have stayed there, but chose to come to Corcoran, and I'd really like to keep it that way. So I urge you to please reject this proposal. This business needs to go in a business area, not a residential area. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone, sir? Please state your name and your address.
Sure, I'm kind of a loudmouth, so
That's
are we okay without the microphone?
Well, no, we have people on Zoom and people out in the lobby, if you
Sure.
like.
Sure, my name is Mike Beinertz, I reside
If I
at,
could just comment, my wife calls me a loudmouth, so I think we have something in common. Please, I'm sorry, go ahead.
sure, my name is Mike Beinertz, I reside at 23160 Meadowview Drive, which is near Oakdale Drive and County Road 19. I can see the at issue premises from the living room in my home. I've been asked by my neighbors to address a few policy issues and how the city code applies in this matter. You've already heard from other folks in the neighborhood, and I'm sure there's more that are going to speak, but I'm going to try to just address code real quickly, and then an issue I see with the application and the resolution itself. So the city code is abundantly clear with regard to home occupations. In section 1030.100, the purpose is clearly defined. The purpose of this ordinance is to maintain the character and integrity of residential areas.
If I could, are you referring to subdivision 7?
No, at the very beginning of 1030.100, where it has purpose.
Okay.
That's just what I'm speaking to there. And then I was gonna discuss subdivision 4C.
Okay, thank you.
Within 4C, it says any home occupation shall be clearly incidental and secondary to the residential use of the premise, shall not change the residential character thereof, and shall result in no incompatibility or disturbance to the surrounding residential uses. The proposal before you violates the requirements set forth in the code and in the proposed resolution. My first point here is that the home occupation is not incidental and secondary to the residential use of the premises. In explaining this, I'm going to rely on some of the words of the gentleman to my right. The Hatchling Center maintains an active YouTube channel. There was videos posted on July 5th where the gentleman explains that a kind benefactor purchased the home and she wishes to remain anonymous. This benefactor is a very sincere and diligent student who expressed to me her long-held wish to provide a place for me to give teachings. On July 9th, in a live stream, the gentleman states, "I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the benefactor for providing this huge place as per her wish to benefit and reach more people. So I hope and pray together we will be able to fulfill her wishes and we will be able to reach more people and help more people." As we know, the Couchling Center is an organization, has a board of directors, Minnesota, Texas, and New York. So I asked the commission, does the center sound like a home occupation? Or is this the purchase of a single family home by a benefactor to be used by an organization for purely organizational purposes? Again, the code is very clear that the purpose of the ordinance addressing home occupations is to maintain character and integrity. The second point I would like to address is based upon the application submitted to the city. Sure, I'll make it quick. The application states the applicants as Labsang Yeshi and Nati Na Win. They list their address as 8924 Olive Lane North in Maple Grove, not the at issue premise on Oakdale Drive. Looking through Hennepin County property records, in January of 2023, Miss Wynn conveyed the property in Maple Grove to Mr. Yeshi. That property is currently a homestead property in Mr. Yeshi's name. On July 3rd of 2023, the property at issue was conveyed by deed to Mr. Yeshi and Miss Wynn. What the city has not provided to us is where these individuals actually live and reside. In the resolution, it specifically states that this permit is non-transferable. The permit shall terminate upon any of the following: if the applicant ceases operations, if property ownership changes, if neither individual to whom the license has been issued ceases to live at the subject premises. We do not have clarity of where these folks actually live. We know there's two properties. They have conveyed property between each other before. I know I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to go through everything, but one thing I do want to say to the commissioners, to the council members, the gentleman here brought up the fact that he worries that people will think he's a cult or that his organization is a cult. We don't believe that, sir. And what I would suggest is that the city, planning commission, City Council try to find an acceptable, properly zoned property for Coachling Center and its activities. A residential neighborhood and a single-family home is not a proper place for their activities. Thank you.
Thank you. You in the back? And
Hello. Hello neighbors. I'm Cody Holland. I live at 10420 County Road 19. I am the horse farm that he refers to in the application that's across the road from them. And we moved to Corcoran 7 years ago, looking for a rural place for our horse farm. And I agree with everything that's already been said. We want rural residential. We don't want a business. And mostly what I have for you is just, I agree with the part about how they need a business location, not a residential location. And I didn't even know this was going on as an IUP application until the letter came in the mail, 3 weeks ago? At which point I read it and it said, you know, we pulled the stuff off the website and it said all activities ceased when they were found out from the city in October that they weren't supposed to be doing this. And I'm like, well, that's not really true because my window looks out at their place and lots of things have happened since October when supposedly everything immediately stopped. But when I got the letter, I started taking pictures and I have a few of them. The March 4th one you all know about because somebody came to the city and reported it. But I have some other ones to share with you. Thank you. I also have a copy of the previous owner's IUP.
You can give it to the chair. He'll pass it down. Thanks.
thank you.
Natalie, do you want a copy?
I can take a copy for the record.
Do you need a copy for the record? That's my question. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll do it. Sir?
Thank you. My name is Mark Jerf. I live at 10647 Maple Lane East, just northeast of the property that we are discussing today. I had a wise man once tell me, seek to understand before you seek to be right. In a world that focuses a lot of attention on being right, I thought it might be fitting to start by trying to understand. Now, while there's a lot I don't understand, admittedly, I want to begin with a few things that I'm trying to understand. First, I understand that Corcoran is changing. From the construction I witness every day on my commute to the development at Hope Community Church, Corcoran is changing every day. And change isn't necessarily good or bad, it's an inescapable part of life. And we've entrusted you with a major role in guiding that change. Second, I understand that it can't always be easy to sit in your chairs. You are asked to marry the colliding world of rural America with a bursting suburbia, and the decisions you are asked to make rarely make everyone happy. I want to personally thank you for your hard work, and for those of you who came in as well to be here tonight, and ask that you would continue to advocate and battle for what is best for our city and its residents. It is my understanding that the Coachling Center has done many good things over the years. I understand that it was founded to support Tibetan nuns and now continues to promote the values of kindness, selflessness, and inner peace under the teachings of Drupra Rinpoche, who is here tonight. I understand that after 25 years in one location, the Coachling Center was found without a home, and that this was believed to be the long-sought solution to a long journey. I understand that you, as a planning commission, are making an effort to accommodate this request. I think that's probably your job. The changing of language across several documents the past months shows me this to try to get the request in compliance. And I'm glad that you are an accommodating body. It's a good quality, and I hope that our city is an inviting place that welcomes diversity. However, I hope we agree that accommodating this request should not come at the expense of the surrounding neighborhood. Now, we can argue about whether or not the Kacholing Center is, and their use of the property qualifies as a place of worship and the code ramifications of that decision. Is it possible to have gatherings with shrines and golden Buddhas and yet not be a place of worship? The answer to that is semantics and politics. And I don't really want anything to do with either of those. But what I will argue, and my perception is this, is that the property was purchased with the intention of using it primarily for classes, events, and activities of the Kacholing Center. There's abundant language in many places to support that statement, and the use of the property thus far confirms that. I would call it a religious or cultural community center. I believe this is a better comparison than using it, the comparison of a yoga studio or a Christian church. In fact, the owner wrote in a January 25th document that, in quotation marks, we agreed to permit the center to carry out its activities there, the center to carry out its activities. Those of us who drive by several times a day can attest to this. Most nights when I drive by, the lights are out in the house and there are no cars in the driveway. You already know that the garage has been remodeled to create a large meeting room. My understanding is that Mr. Yeshi was not the one without a home when this property was purchased, but the Kacholing Center was the one without the home. I'm very concerned specifically about the provisions granted in this proposal in regards to large events. In addition to large events, the document from 1026 also mentioned weekend retreats for 40 to 50 people. Unless otherwise specified, this could mean a multi-day overnight events. This is a safety concern in addition to sanitation and septic concerns. While I am very much supportive of a Buddhist resident teaching meditative classes out of his home, and I mean that sincerely, I am very much opposed to this property becoming a religious community center. The activity on the property, the Kacholing Center website, and videos posted online all give compelling evidence that the latter and not the former is what's happening at 23360 Oakdale Drive. For this reason, I'm asking you to not recommend approval for this request. If you choose to recommend approval, I would like to specifically ask that any language allowing large events and a potential parking lot would be eliminated from the proposal, as many others have mentioned. And I would implore the city of Corcoran to be accommodating to and work with the owners of 23360 Oakdale Drive to find an appropriate venue for larger community events. I'll close with this. My 8-year-old daughter plays often in one of the backyards adjacent to this property. She and her friends build Frogland, a big mud trench in the back of the yard. We're all thrilled about it, with the frogs that they catch in the neighborhood. I can send her down the block all the way to the other end of the neighborhood, confident that we know each of the neighbors and that she'll get back and forth safely. Please don't disrupt the wetlands behind her friend's house. Please protect what is a rural residential neighborhood. Please don't build a public parking lot in our residential neighborhood. I wouldn't let my 8-year-old walk alone down the street in a commercial area. Please don't change the dynamic of this neighborhood by allowing a community center to operate on a residential property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
He brought his daughter with. And I was wondering what she thought of him. Thumbs up or down? Did he do okay? She doesn't want to answer. I'll stop.
A future politician.
She loves frogs too.
Any other comments? We've already heard from you. I'll give you 2 minutes. If you can keep your comments. I'm sorry?
He's not an applicant, to be clear.
Oh,
I'm not allowed to speak.
oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were one of the applicants. Go ahead.
No, I'm not an applicant. However, I'm a non-resident. My name is Ken Tabakman. I live in Brooklyn Park, 10792 Kyle Avenue. For 18 years, I was the president of the board of Kacholing Center. I'm no longer president of the board, but I've been part of that community for a very long time. And based on comments that I out before the meeting,
I expected this kind of response from all of you, and I have to say, is a great deal of disappointment. You know, Kocheling Center has met in people's homes for decades. In Richfield, Minneapolis. We had retreats out in my house when it was in East Bethel a number of years ago. We have never had anyone in the community question us or have any questions about what we were doing. And so, of course, I'm very, very disappointed. When Rinpoche bought this property, he planned to spend part of his time living in the house and part of his time living in Maple Grove. It's a long drive out here, and he has a lot of responsibilities in town. Yes, I grant you that, you know, he would not have bought, he's not interested in teaching, you know, in that house and here in Corcoran. But I'm really disappointed that the community isn't more welcoming. This is a community. You know, it could be people meeting with him, that neighbors could. When we first came out for his welcoming party, we saw someone walking down the road, and she very friendly waved at us and smiled and kept walking with her dog. And I thought, yes, this was a good place for Rinpoche to buy a house. So I'm disappointed. I would hope more from this community. I don't think that we're doing as his guest at Kocheling Center disturbs this as a rural community. There's no construction kernel invisible to you all. I understand concerns parking area. I had some concerns about that too. But in terms of the use of the property and his residence there and what we plan to do there, I'm just very disappointed in all of you. I would hope that Minnesota Knights would have some sway in the decision here and your decision as the commission, the planning commission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments? No? 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I understand because, and I not only understand, I respect your feeling, but some of the things that you mentioned are not true. So, right to clarify. So a lady said, okay, sorry. When I mentioned that we cease all the activity, what I meant was all the classes. Of course, there are people coming in, and because I'm in the middle of renovation, remodeling, so there are people coming in. And also there are people coming to see me, and it's my house. And I think I have the right to have visitors. So when you mentioned that, oh, they even claim that cease the activity, but I could see from my window. That's not true. There was no class held since we received the notice. All the classes were held online. And then another person kind of accused me for being fraud, giving, using different names. That's also not true. That's not unfair. I respect your view. I understand you have your own concerns. And of course, I leave it to the commissioners to decide. But I don't really agree when you accuse me of all this. So anyway, thank you. I respect you, and I leave it to the commissioners to decide. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Natalie, thank you again for the work that you've done on this report. You did a very nice job. Is everyone okay with me going first on this? Is that okay?
Sure. Mr. Chair, did you want me to speak at all to any of the items that were brought up during the planning commission, during the public hearing? Sometimes for deliberation, that's been helpful in the past, so it's up to you, but we can do it later.
Yeah, no, we'll do that later.
Okay.
So again, Natalie, thank you. Like one of the previous speakers here tonight, I read the city code, and section 1030.100 requires this planning commission to consider the impact on neighboring properties And I don't know how we can do that effectively without notice of this meeting being shared with the neighbors. So first, can staff please confirm for me that neighbors were notified of tonight's meeting?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. As part of our normal public hearing process, we do mail out notices to every property within a 500-foot radius. Additionally, notice was posted on the city website and in the Crow River News. Finally, the development sign policy was a little vague, but we went ahead and just put up a development sign to make sure that notice was clear to anyone driving by the site as well.
Great, thanks for clearing that up for me. So I cannot think of a better way to get the facts we need to deliberate tonight than hearing from neighbors. And I just wanted to make sure that we have a complete record to evaluate. So because of this, I am especially grateful to all of you in attendance here tonight. So thank you. Based on the comments received tonight, almost all of which express some sentiment against approving this application, I believe that we have a record sufficient to show that neighboring properties, which are residences, will be negatively impacted by approving this application. One of the things we as a commission are to consider is the general character of the area where the CHOL is proposed. On that point, I tend to agree with the neighbors with the comments I heard tonight. Neighbors who believe that something like this application should be in a non-residential zone, especially considering that a 20-space parking lot is contemplated by the application. Additionally, I understand that landowners want to be free to have family barbecues and the like, but I think that this has a distinctly commercial aspect to it. And for that reason, I think that this commission should recommend denial of the application. And those are my comments.
Okay, I will. Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Langerman. Firstly, I want to say I just recently took a trip to Thailand, which is majority Buddhist country, and I have great respect for what you do and your faith, and so I appreciate that. I also want to comment that many years ago, I was a student at Hanover Elementary, and I used to drive Oakdale Drive every single day, and it's my favorite road in Corcoran to drive. So I totally agree with the great community you have and how beautiful of a road it is in your overall community. I support the comments that you made. I think also the nature of the business being donation-based versus a transaction tangible service presents a challenge in that business is always on. If someone visits, has a good experience, decides to make a donation, the nature of the business, I think, will be difficult for the permit to control and to make something very controllable and control the experience for residents. I also certainly agree that a 20-car parking lot is inappropriate for the neighborhood, and many of the reasons stated tonight, I certainly came to similar conclusions. So if I also recommend denial, but if we do go other ways, I have thoughts on adjustments to the proposal as well. So we can get there if we need to.
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a question for staff first. And that question was, what was driving the, again, it was very helpful to know that it was proposed, that basically it was an exercise to determine that enough parking would be allowed there. But my question is, what drove the exercise in determining the number of parking spots? How is that determined? I know how it's determined when we have a commercial business. What drives it when we have a home occupation? And part of the reason I'm asking this, folks, is that as we go online, the nature of home businesses is changing. And so I just want to ask.
So there was no formula used because there really isn't a formula used for home occupation businesses. For example, we have IUPs for car repair, and we don't use our typical formula for car repair. for a car care
Sure.
facility in the home occupation. So the number 20, I believe, was just thinking, well, if you're having up to 25 people, worst case scenario, probably would need up to 20 additional spaces in addition to the parking lot. I'm sorry, the driveway they already have. It's already a fairly significant driveway. And it probably accommodates more than 5 to 6 cars as it is today. And so that's why it does seem like staff agrees to, if for this to move forward, to require them at this point to put in an additional driveway expansion to accommodate 20 cars is excessive, especially when the experience that they had prior to ceasing the classes was that they have 5 to 6 cars on a typical Sunday, which fit on the driveway as it is with room to spare. But really, that was just an exercise that, okay, well, worst case scenario, you guys do have some growth, and with trying to figure out the limitations of the IUP, how would this be accommodated? And it was basically an exercise driven to show that parking could be accommodated here, and then being able to also infer that it would also be able to go to the north theoretically. There is space to do that. It's a 3-acre lot. So that was the thinking behind it from the planning level. And that was not a proposal from the applicant. The original site plan really, the original thinking was that they wouldn't need any additional parking. That was entirely driven by staff's request just to try to make sure we thought it through.
Okay, so is it possible in theory to issue the conditional home occupation license with restriction around that? Like, because for me, that parking lot, for some reason, even though it's an exercise, really does push it to beyond residential. And so within the parameters of allowance, is there a mechanism in which a modification can be made that really limits that if additional parking expansion is needed, then that is a part of what moves this from being able to be a conditional home occupation license to needing to be a center that operates somewhere else? Or, you know, I guess I'm looking for what is permissible for us in that.
So if it's something, if you wanted to say that the driveway cannot be expanded but parking must be accommodated on the driveway, limiting it to the cars that are on the driveway, as it is today, I would just keep in mind that,
Something, right,
residents today can have as big of a driveway they want, as
Sure.
long as it's not in a drainage and utility easement. And we have residents,
Right.
whether or not they're operating a business, that have
Right.
quite large driveways.
Right, I know, and I'm not looking to make anything, I think the distinction there is that they're operating residentially entirely. And so I guess that's what I'm looking for within the framework of a conditional home occupation license. Is there, are there different boundaries that we can put around that would really make a distinction between this is no longer a conditional home occupation license, this needs to be, you know, in a different, and I know it's new, so maybe it's just not anything we've additionally explored. I think if we're, you know, I guess in my framework up to this point, their conditional home occupation license are available for residents to use their homes if they can meet the standards. So I think someone made the comment earlier about not wanting any business in their backyard, but that's a restriction. That is something that's available to everybody. So I lend myself to seeing if there's a middle ground here, and allowing the conditional home occupation license, maybe with some different parameters. If it is, I understand that there's a lot of discussion about whether or not things were being followed up to this point, but I just want to review the fact that an IUP can be revoked if certain standards are set out and then they are not met. And so in good faith, I guess I'd rather offer somebody the opportunity to comply with an IUP for a conditional home occupation license rather than deny it altogether. That's a part of where I am at. I also want to indicate that over in Maple Grove, there is a residential neighborhood that does Bunt's Backyard, which is like an outdoor theater experience for families, and they have, I would equate that to these large gatherings, I guess, on a different, they actually have far more people at that residential location, but it's an entirely rural residential neighborhood. And so I guess in a framework, I was thinking that I understand again that the distinction here is it's not a residential home. And I don't feel like any restrictions we're putting on those large gatherings would impact residents who want to have family reunions or want to have a wedding in their backyard. Like, you know what I mean? I just want to be careful that that is the linchpin for me, that is really the distinction, is we're talking about operating a business. But I am in favor of discussion and then trying to find a middle ground by just amending some of the conditions of use. So that's where I'm at right now.
I'm torn, similarly to what you mentioned, as I was reviewing this at home, I kept on looking at ways to ameliorate some of what's in this document, because just because I'm sensitive to the fact that this is a residence and it's impacting everybody that resides around that property. So I was looking at ways to ameliorate that impact, and I do understand that the parking is an exercise, but you can't deny the fact that the potential exists for that to be there in the future, which I think would be detrimental to the residential character. The other aspect that I guess really got my attention is the gentleman back there that started talking about the different zoning requirements and how this meets or does not meet the zoning requirements. And that caught my attention because I think there is some significant ambiguity that resides there. So I think we need to best, we need to make sure that we're within those requirements. So I guess I'm between denying it and looking for further additions to this document that would provide the neighbors more control, and if in fact this does move to something that is just not residential.
Reading it at home, I was under the impression it was all in the house, minimal cars, more like a club, more like a yoga. I don't think that would be very disruptive. Listening to the neighbors, seeing the parking lot, I think the parking lot's non-starter. I don't think a 20-car parking lot, gravel, belongs in the front yard of anybody's house in a residential neighborhood. I also, listening to some of the comments and the size of the center, and maybe it's a fact, I'm not sure, the possibility that it could accommodate up to 100 people, and the potential for growing your community of worshipers.
You can decide every 3 years and then
Yeah.
we always want.
Yeah, okay, hold on.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't think growing it in this area would be a good use of the residential neighborhood. I think keeping it small, like a book club, parking in the driveway, having it inside, very little impact to the neighbor. Very less impact than a lot of things that go on in neighborhoods. We have big lots in Corcoran too, so Oakdale isn't a gravel road. It can accommodate traffic, but I certainly don't agree with growing the business there, putting a parking lot in. And that may not suit your ultimate use either if the building was made to accommodate a larger gathering, a larger place of worship.
Thank you.
Could you clarify, staff, for us all that conditional home occupation license, the IUPs for that are specific to the actual home occupation that is taking place, right? Each is an individual application. I guess that's what I'm getting at, right? So it takes a look at what the home occupation being requested is, and then what it is the applicant is requesting, and formulates whether or not it would be permissible.
Correct. So there's standards outlined in code,
Yep.
but yeah, basically an IUP for conditional, it's not like there's a specific list of businesses that are permissible. It's, if these standards are met, it requires just a registration, and that's an allowable home occupation. And then we have the administrative permit, process, which is what the previous business went through. And so if these standards are met, then it goes through an administrative permit process. And so those are, 5 to 10 trips, 10 trips a day. So 5 cars going to the site, to and from the site a day. And a couple other standards. And then anything that doesn't meet those standards from those categories goes into the conditional home occupation license. And so it is very tailored, it's non-transferable. And it is something that's, there's ability to ongoing evaluate how it fits within the neighborhood.
Okay. So I guess at this point in time, like, having heard where everybody initially stands, I would be up for setting like a trip limit, right? Which would help to control size, in terms of, right? And then either when number of trips exceeds that, or the 3 years is, 3-year point is up for growth, it can be determined whether or not this is, still a home occupation, or whether.
Who is counting the trips?
Yeah.
I know, but it's also a part of, I mean, right now the neighborhood is, I understand, but I'm trying to find a way, if number of trips is not something that you would be in favor of, do you have a different kind of proposal, or are you just unwilling to consider a middle ground at this point because you feel like it's not working?
Well, I guess my position is that the applicant needs to follow city code, and the code and the application in front of this commission does not meet city code. And therefore, I'm going to recommend denial.
But the part of the code it's not meeting specifically for you is that.
It is not my job to help the applicant with his application.
Help me understand. That's what I'm asking, because the part that I recall you discussing was the changing the disturbance to the neighborhood around it.
Right.
Okay, and so that's that's solely the basis for which you feel like this is not.
Well, that basis is based on city code 1030.100, which requires us to consider the impact on neighboring properties. We've heard from the neighboring properties, and I think that we have a record that supports the recommendation of denial.
May I ask a few more questions to staff? Is there a particular reason why signage is not addressed or restriction on signage?
There would be no signage.
There would be no
not
signage. That's assumed.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there ever any opportunity or flexibility in time binding an IUP? And I know every 3 years we check it for compliance, but.
So staff would respond on a complaint basis. I believe we would be within our rights to have a review period separate from that. I think code says every 3 years, but I think it would be permissible for us to have a special condition that it be reviewed at a 1-year marker to confirm compliance throughout the years and throughout the year. If they wanted to have a quick or a check-in sooner. I'd want to double check with the city attorney, but I think that would be something that could be added to the resolution.
And here's why my head went that way. In the spirit of trying to accommodate all parties and figure out what works. And based on the code of not disturbing the neighborhood, if somehow we found the right controls for this to make the impact minimal. And is there an opportunity to pause and collect feedback from the community? Or any type of opportunity to receive, maybe that's okay, shaking head no.
Commissioner Lynn, tonight, you would want to make a recommendation one way or the other. I wouldn't want to pause mid-meeting,
No.
due to the 60-day time rule. They do have a complete application, and so I would, and the
I
next
meant
meeting
after the IUP went into effect, after a certain amount of time, it stops. We then revisit, but never mind.
Oh, okay, just to clarify, I think that potentially we could revisit the standards to make sure they're working and readjust based on findings, absolutely. I don't think I think it would be harder to allow it and then completely stop the use while we're reevaluating those standards. So I would say if the standards are, only 15 people per class, no more than 10 vehicles on the site, that's all that's allowed once a week. and something like that, and then have it reviewed in a year to confirm compliance and to confirm that the impact to the neighborhood. I think that would be potentially something just to, does that answer your question a bit better?
Yes.
Okay.
I have two more, and then I promise I'll be quiet. Is there any particular requirement as to the percentage of time a resident would need to be in the home to have this?
To be considered a permanent.
To be like,
Right.
you know, like when you have multiple state residences, it's like
It
you
should
have
be
to
a
be.
homesteaded property. It should be their primary place of residence. So that would be, my understanding is that it is a homesteaded property and it is his primary place of residence. I don't know how much time he's living in Maple Grove. That would be, but that is a standard. We could make sure it's clear that majority of the time he needs to be living here, even if he has other residences
Yep.
throughout the Twin Cities based on the services he provides. I
Okay.
think that could be something added to the resolution.
Yeah,
And
I think
if
it's the
that's
clarity
something
that-
the applicant agrees to as well. So
But who is responsible for knocking on the door and seeing if he's living there that day?
needs to be a homesteaded property. That's as far as I can really take it. It needs to be a homesteaded property.
And then I think similar to like how there's laws on like where you can file your taxes based on where you say it's in good faith. So at a certain point in time, we can set the standards, but then we have to say, I'm not gonna, you know, if you're filing your income taxes, saying you live in South Dakota, nobody's checking to make sure you're there 6 months plus 1 day every year. You know what I mean?
Last question. The language around flexibility of similar organizations. I worry about that in that it could provide more opportunity to use this beyond its expanded intention.
That's why I was very specific about changing the wording to once a week classes and making sure that the classes apply to all meetings and gatherings. I think it actually limits it further because you can't have a class for the Kachaling Center on a Sunday and then have another class for a different foundation another day. If he has a foundation meeting on Sunday, then that's it for the week. So it would just to make it clear that any organizational meeting or gathering that he's associated with, an organization he's associated with, would be under the scope of the IUP. So I actually think that it does more to protect to that concern than it did in the previous draft.
Understood. Thank you for explaining that. I think, again, back to one of the original points I made, the nature of the community center being a resource, particularly maybe at any point in time for people to visit, I think makes this a challenging case. So I've said maybe.
I think one of the things that I heard a big concern going forward with it as it is written is the larger gatherings up to 5 times a year. That would be considered excessive, I think, in a residential neighborhood. If you had a neighbor that had a big party with, 50 guests, once a year or once every, well, I guess 5 times a year. That to me would be considered excessive, and I think most neighbors would consider that excessive. Even if you have a neighbor that has a big party once a year, that neighbor usually will go ahead, talk to the other neighbors, make sure they're okay with it, make sure the neighborhood's cleaned up afterwards, make sure everybody's invited in the neighborhood. I mean, reach out to the neighbors and make sure they're okay with it before each gathering, but 5 times a year is, I would think a lot of people would have a problem with that in a neighborhood setting.
To add on to that, I think particularly if we didn't have a community resource to host an event where we have, if it's in the summer, we do have a rentable space and opportunities to host elsewhere as well.
Well, with that, I'd like to make a motion to recommend denial of this application. Can I get a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Aye. Or nay.
Nay.
I never know, am I agreeing to oppose or am I disagreeing to oppose?
Is that double negative?
I know.
Just real quick, there's a lot of folks, Mr. Chair, if I may, want to know when this is going to come in front of the council.
That's a good question, Natalie.
March 28th.
March 28th?
Yes.
Okay, March 28th. And
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for coming out today.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Are these all? Thanks so much.
They're on. I think that is.
We're on for a refresh audience here. I'm Jay Tobin. Nice to meet you.
Yes, thank you. Captain.
Thank you so much. You have coffee? Thank you.
Short recess? Recording in progress, okay.
I don't have, well, I.
Hold on.
It's not, our earlier conversation.
Yeah.
Should be muted up there now.
From here, there's a special.
I believe so. If you want to.
I know.
Sounds like it might still be.
There were a couple months as a kind
Okay.
Good work, everybody.
Yeah, plus the busy season here is always the busy season at home. Yeah. He. His shift. No, not right now. He would have needed to sign it well. We are ready, but.
Do I have to hit my little hammer?
Yeah, Dave.
Really? Okay.
Have fun. And he.
I'd like to open the public hearing for agenda item 7B. This is an intricate multi-step application for a comprehensive plan amendment, rezoning, preliminary plat, and a few variances. The city file number is 23-033. Natalie, you're up.
You said you wanted to open the public hearing, and so she was like ready to pounce and be like, no, I have to staff report.
Hey, I'm the rookie.
You've only been sitting there for a year.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
So our second item tonight is, the applicant is Woodland Hills of Corcoran Incorporated. It is for a subdivision at the northeast corner of County Road 116 and Hackamore Road. It contains a 60 single-family residential lot, 1 community recreational lot, and 5 outlots. There are several components to the application. The first component is that comprehensive plan amendment. Currently, the land use for this site is guided low-density residential, which has a density requirement of 3 to 5 units per acre. The proposed pre-development density of this project came in at 2 units per acre. So the proposed comprehensive plan amendment would establish a new land use designation currently titled very low density residential and allow development at a density of 2 to 3 units per acre. And it would re-guide this project site to the new land use designation. And this would still allow for the city to meet its overall requirement of 3 units per acre. The map was provided in the staff report, and staff finds the comprehensive plan amendment makes sense, as it would allow for reasonable development at the site cater to supply and demand for development with a variety of lot sizes and has merit beyond the interest of the proponent of the request, as we are aware of at least one incoming application that's facing a similar issue while trying to meet the standard or to meet the platting requirements with a 65-foot lot width or around that size, especially with things like our shoreline overlay district. It makes things very complicated to hit that 3 to 5 sometimes. So it does seem to have some merit beyond just this application. The second component are 2 zoning ordinance amendments, a map amendment to rezone the site from residential single family 2 to residential single family 3. This would allow for a smaller lot size as low as 7,500 square feet and a smaller lot width of 65 foot wide. And then to do this, we also need to do a text amendment because right now the intent of the RSF3 district makes it clear that it's specifically for land guided and low density. So we need to clarify that, or very low density. And then we also are taking out the specific density target within the ordinance language and just broadening it up to whatever land use designation is comprehensive. It just needs to be consistent with our comprehensive plan. So staff finds that there are findings of fact to support both zoning ordinance amendments, assuming that comprehensive plan amendment is made.
Is what?
Approved.
Approved.
So this is the site plan. It's a little cut off on the top on your screen. I apologize. But so it's 60 lots. We have the main access point coming off of Hackmore Road to the south. And then we have 3, oh my goodness. This is the wrong site plan. I apologize. I'm so sorry. And we made them change it too. So it's my fault. So actually, let me see if I can find a different site plan that has the correct, site plan. So the,
Do you need a 5-minute break?
should not take me 5 minutes. I have it up, but
Is the one contained in the packet the correct one?
it should have on the left side where the 2 cul-de-sacs were on the left side, they should be one through street now.
No.
No, then we don't have the
don't.
proper one either.
Yeah, I don't think we have that.
He's prepared.
Yeah, I don't know. I just realized now. Through street concept.
Yep, it is in our packet, folks.
Oh,
It's in the
go
one
there.
that contains
Oh,
the
thank
yellow with the red, so look at the big one, and then go to page. Oh, there's no page number listed on this one, but if you shoot past all the photographs and look at the first map, that is the proper site plan.
Okay, so I didn't completely fail, just a little bit. All right, so I
Yeah.
apologize. Thank you for your patience. Let me get the screen up. So this is the site plan. We, in our southeast district, cul-de-sacs are highly discouraged in the favor of providing connectivity wherever possible. So this cul-de-sac here in the northeast portion of the site makes sense due to the fact that there's already an existing neighborhood. And then there's features such as wetlands that really prevent a connection. Same with the southeast cul-de-sac. However, there were 2 cul-de-sacs as previously shown on the screen. And staff pushed for that connectivity that was engineering and public safety recommended to be able to have that connectivity to comply with our southeast district, as well as allow for more efficient public safety services, as well as infrastructure looping, things like that. So the applicant worked with the staff to change their plans, and they didn't lose any lots. So that was exciting for all of us. And that is the plan that's currently proposed to have that through street. And then in addition to the 60 lots, we have the amenity lot located here on the cul-de-sac in the southeast portion of the site that contains, currently is proposed for a pool and a seasonal pool house. And we will talk about that further. Let me go back to my slideshow. Thank you for your patience. Okay. So so for the preliminary plat, again, we have 60 residential lots, 42 lots are proposed to have a lot width greater than 75 feet. 18 lots would have a lot between lot width of 65 to 75 feet. So even though they're requesting to have that minimum lot size changed, actually very few of the lots are gonna be at 65. But the minimum lot width in RSF2 is 80 feet, so that they do need that flexibility, that change in the district to be able to accommodate the 60 lots. They are requested, typically for a side setback, we require a 10-foot setback on the living side, 5-foot setback on the garage side, with a minimum building separation of at least 15 feet between detached homes. The applicant is requesting a variance needed for 7.5-foot side setback, and we'll talk about that further. Going back to the amenity lot, staff, including public safety, continue to be concerned that there is no on-site parking proposed for the lot. It is located in that far southeast corner at the end of a cul-de-sac, and that's not a very central location. And no parking is allowed in cul-de-sacs. So some on-street parking would be permissible on the north side of the street leading to the cul-de-sac. But staff is recommending, based on looking at the American Planning Association parking standards and previous approvals granted for similar use in Ravinia, at least 3 parking spaces on site, one of which would be a dedicated handicap space. Yeah. So there are several components evaluated in the staff report. One of the areas where some adjustments need to be made is regards to landscaping and wetlands. The wetland buffers in the proposal need to be corrected. Several wetland buffers currently drop below our required minimum buffer width. So that's something that will need to be adjusted and could impact a couple of lots. So it'll be something we need to continue to work through with the applicant. Additional landscaping is needed on the amenity lot based on the non-residential use, or the non-single family home use of the lot. And then enhanced landscaping along County Road 116. There's an area where it either needs to be extended or lot 7 needs to have a setback of 100 feet applied to the entire lot. And then for the most part, the plan shown does meet the buffer yard requirements, though some plantings needed to be added along the north project boundary. I think they just used the wrong formula. And then the applicant is concerned with the long-term viability of the landscaping plan as it's proposed. And so that is, again, one of the variance requests that we will talk about. So again, the first setback variance is for the, first variance is for the setback of 7.5 feet. The applicant provided one of the best detailed narratives I've seen for a variance as to why the request meets the practical difficulty standard outlined in city code. Staff believes that the requested setback is a distinction without much of a difference, since a 15-foot building separation will be maintained. It does seem to make practical sense that a consistent size setback be applied to avoid coordination concerns, especially on the city staffing level, with multiple builders and property owners looking to create custom homes. Staff would prefer that it gets handled as a zoning ordinance amendment, but the applicant received direction from council to move forward with a variance application at the concept level. The applicant offers a 25-foot front setback as a way to mitigate the impacts of granting flexibility in the side setback. And I did confirm each and every lot is currently shown at a 25-foot setback, where 20 feet is currently required by the district. The second variance is from the garage maximum percentage standard. So in this district, there are architectural standards that need to be met. And the applicant, and that includes, the fact that on the ground floor elevation, the garage is not supposed to exceed 55%. And that's not including the second level. And that historically has been a problem for 3-car garages, and the applicant anticipates that most of these homes will be 3, if not 4-car garages. So again, the applicant provided a very detailed narrative, and then staff finds that it may be reasonable to grant the variance, considering it has been a common PUD flexibility, particularly for 3-car garages. Staff prefers that households have the ability to park their vehicles comfortably without relying on street parking, particularly since city ordinance prevents street parking overnight in the winter. The applicant offers a requirement that to add a requirement that a second story be required and a 30-foot front setback as a way to offset the impacts of granting this variance. Staff agrees that it would make sense to have that second story requirement, but does not think a 30-foot front setback is necessary. So that's definitely up to discussion for the planning commission. Finally, the third variance is for the buffer yard flexibility. Staff remains concerned that granting the variance to the standard will lead to several more requests, as it won't be a unique complaint among applicants that there are concerns regarding the number of trees and best management practices. There are multiple options provided to meet the buffer yard requirements. And if the commission and council agree that the tree survey and site photos showing an existing buffer submitted by the applicant, it would be better for the city to make a finding that these areas are exempt from the ordinance due to an existing wooded area than it would be to open the door to variance. And then I think in my staff report, I said if a variance is desired for this, then I do think a zoning ordinance amendment long-term would be an appropriate change if that's desired. So at this time, so that is a brief overview. There was a 25-page report, so there was more to it. Those were the main concerns. At this time, staff recommends opening the public hearing to take testimony and recommends approval of the comprehensive plan amendment, zoning ordinance amendment, the resolution supporting the zoning ordinance amendment, the preliminary plat, and then the variance resolution in front of you tonight approves the side setback and garage maximum variances, but denies the buffer yard variance.
Great, thank you, Natalie. Natalie, I don't need any motions to open the public hearing, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and do you have any cards?
I do not have any cards, Mr.
I assume you folks are the applicants, or yes? Okay, would you like to step on up and please state your name, who you represent, and I'm okay on your address.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission, staff, and a couple council members that are here. My name is Steve Jett, and I represent the developer, which is Woodland Hills of Corcoran, Inc. I'm going to spend a couple minutes talking about some of the things that Natalie did, some of the things I agree with, some of the things I want you at least to consider. And then certainly when I'm done, let the rest of the public talk, and then I'll answer questions if you have questions of me. Start with, we're excited about the site. The site is a nice site, probably one of the most challenging sites I've ever seen because of the number of wetlands on the site. And to actually get a density of any sort, it's almost impossible because of the wetlands. With that said, the comp plan amendment allows us to do some of the residential developing that we like to do. So we certainly support staff's recommendation on the comp plan. Rezoning would follow that as well. An example of not a similar project, a similar lot size project. If you go into Plymouth, Hollydale is currently being developed. I don't know if you had the opportunity to drive through it. Some of them are larger lots, some of them are 90s, 95s, but if you go to the northwest part of that site, most of those houses are 65s. Concern of one of the residents is that the houses that were shown wouldn't fit on 65-foot wide lots. Those houses with 3-car garages have pads around 49 feet wide. So they would fit on 50-foot wide pads. So the houses that are shown at 4,000 to 5,000 square feet will fit on a 65-foot wide. But then there are more 75s and 65s out there. Talking about the preliminary plat, Natalie, is it possible to pull up the right one?
All right, 1 second.
I got your back, Natalie.
No, that was.
Well, I'm going to explain a mistake I made 2 years in a minute. So it's
It is also on page 1 of our development narrative too, I found, so.
One thing I asked you, I realize it's not necessarily in your purview, but there's a discussion very briefly about wetland aid in the southern part of the property. Anything you can do to help us, frankly, we'd like to fill it and mitigate for it, because we don't feel it's providing any natural benefit to the site. Plus, we'll be ponding in that location. We have to provide ponding for Hackamore. So we really need that wetland to be, or allow us to fill it and to mitigate it elsewhere. Those wetlands were all preserved. So we're really only asking for 3 small wetlands to be filled. 2 of them really have no issue. One little one here and one up there. That's the one in contention. I just bring it up. As far as a landscaping plan, wetland buffer, yeah, we have to amend the wetland buffer to make sure, there's no issues about that. And I don't think there's a lot of spaces. There's a few 10s that we have to go to 15s or 20s. I get it. We need to do that. Buffer, do you have the landscape plan by chance? Go through the landscape plan a little bit. If you, on the west side along 116, the staff report mentions lot 7, that whether or not the 100-foot setback is met. What I did is I measured lot 7, I measured where the pad was for the house, and that was over 100 feet. So my stupidity, I go, well, it's gonna be 100 feet. What I wasn't thinking about is in the future, somebody wants to add a deck or 3 sinks and porch. So an updated landscape plan, we will bring 116 buffer landscaping down, so it includes lot 7 to meet the city's ordinance.
I swear I opened it, it's just not loading.
That actually, it wasn't the landscape plan, but I actually, landscape plan will be helpful for a couple of the other.
Mhm.
You can still find it.
Close out a PDF and try again.
Staff report mentions the need to make sure we round up. Yes, when we update the landscape plan along County Road 116, we'll absolutely round up to the right number. Buffer landscaping for wetlands 3 and 5, whether or not we need buffers along those. Both 3 and 5 have existing trees within those wetlands, plus there is some substantial distance. I frankly don't even know if you can see these houses from 116 in the summertime with the landscaping with the trees that are already in those buffers. So my contention is the landscape plan does not show new trees there. I think that's appropriate given size of the wetlands, the distances from the property lines, the existing trees. There we go. So you can see it. There's no buffer there and no buffer there. Update detailed at A. Now this is where you've got the buffer landscaping that showing meets the code. If you look right here, that is, I think, where you, Natalie, talked about the number of trees. And then if you count the trees that are in there, these trees are less than that. What happened was when this may surprise you, but this isn't the first rendition of this the land plan. We've gone through different changes with staff. Originally, there was no right of way up here. And we had buffer landscaping here. That buffer landscaping plus that buffer landscaping equal that. So when we put in the right of way, the number of trees dropped and that wasn't changed. So the truth is, I think numbers in detail A are right. We just have to update what it says there. Either way, assuming we don't get a variance for it, what's showing and we'll meet the ordinance. Speaking of that, lot 19 is this lot here. I guess I wasn't under the understanding, or maybe I didn't understand, that if we gave the city the right of way, that we also had to buffer to the same level to the north property line. I mean, if we do, we could squeeze it in the side yard of that lot, but I still don't know. I don't know if it's clear enough in the ordinance for me to understand that it's really needed there. But we'll get to the variance in a minute. The amenity lot. Down in the southeast corner, we've got an amenity lot. Once again, I didn't completely understand the city's ordinance on how much landscaping. We would have to add more landscaping, understood. We'll meet the ordinance. Shrubs won't be a problem because we always provide shrubs around all of our amenity lots so that we build. What I would say is that the concern, we've got the amenity lot in the condition. is we don't believe there is a need for 3 off-street parking stalls. I know the staff report talks about it. You know, Public Safety Department talks about the need, but we have strict covenants that we put in place that say people can park by the amenity lot, can't park at the amenity lot. They do have to walk, and it's enforced. So we don't think that 3 off-street parking stalls are necessary. So I hope when you get into this, that conversation happens. The variance, I think the variance 1 with the 7.5 and 7.5 versus 5 and 10. And Natalie presented it appropriately. It's the same 15 feet, 7.5 and 7.5 gives the builders a little more flexibility when they put a house in, garage right, garage left, as opposed to everything having to be all on the same side. Because if you do a 5 and a 10, garage is always on the, let's say, the right side or the left side, you don't get variations. Can't promise you will anyway, but 7.5 and 7.5 provide more flexibility in the future for builders and future homeowners to put the garage on either side.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How is this a hardship?
Granted, it's a hardship, and I tried to explain it in the narrative. It's a hardship because it reduces the flexibility that future builders and homeowners have in placing the house. I get it, I get it, but to me, 7.5 and 7.5 is becoming the standard in other communities. And I think even at the council, when we look at the concept, not to speak for them, but they've somewhat agreed with the idea that maybe we go through a variance at this point, but the ordinance gets changed.
I get you. My only concern is that city code states that a hardship cannot be caused by the developer or the landowner. So how is this a hardship?
I can make something up. I believe the hardship is.
Well, I appreciate the honesty.
We've got a lot of wetlands in here.
Okay.
And the flexibility and the need of the wetlands.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine. I appreciate the questions, absolutely. Variance 2 to the 55, or 55% ground elevation. We just think we can provide a better quality house if you allow us to have larger garages, with the caveat that we have 2 stories above it. So from the streetscape, there still appears to be a large amount of house versus garage. I think the ordinance probably was put into place many years ago to prevent the smell houses. These aren't anywhere close to that type of a house. These are 2-story, large homes, 3 and 4 car garages. And again, if you drove through Hollydale, you actually can see the garages, but the reality is they don't dominate the front of these houses.
So would you agree with me that instead of a variance, perhaps a zoning ordinance amendment would better address this?
I think both the first variance and the second one, absolutely. But reality is, because we're in the middle of an application, to get the application moving.
Fair enough.
But
Fair enough.
absolutely, I think, I don't disagree with that. So variance 3, this is the buffer landscaping. So what we're asking for in short is no changes along here. We're okay with everything here. It really is up here along the north property line and the east property line. There's a difference between the north and the east property lines. There is a large amount of existing trees just off the property on the north property line. On the east property line, there's a large number of trees off the property, but there's also trees along the property line on this property side that will be saved. So what we're asking for, and the reason that's an issue up on the north end is the concern that if you put more trees out there, or a lot more trees, that the competition of the trees and the best management practices, how you grow quality trees, will be affected because you'll have too many trees fighting for the safe sunlight, if you will. So our concern is not putting landscaping in. We put landscaping in all of our developments. Landscaping does help us. It sells product and everything. Our concern isn't too much. Will it actually survive And at the end of the day, will we all be happy 5, 10 years from now with the quality of the trees that are going up? So what we're asking here is not to get rid of it all, but is there a possibility to reduce some of the numbers up there? On the east side,
And are you asking for a reduction in the numbers because you're being told by an expert that those plantings will die? Or that trees will die? I thought I saw something about someone telling
yes,
you.
our landscape architect,
Yeah, there's a caveat on the landscaping plan. Note to the contractor, these buffer quantities are required by city ordinance. And it should be noted, they are not recommended by the landscape architect. The quantity and spacing may be in conflict with best management practices.
so our landscape architecture has come out and said that to us.
Fair
And we
enough.
put it on the plan because she wanted to make sure people are aware that it wasn't her that put it in place.
Sure.
So that's the north, right? On the east side, it's a little bit different. Detail B is what we proposed landscape. And again, we've shown it at what the code requirements. North of there and a little bit south of there, we don't show anything because we do feel there's some large trees that we are preserving on the site that meet the ordinance as far as an exemption. Again, we think that there's probably too many trees in there in detail B. And if we could get some reduction in that, that would be helpful for the long-term health of those trees.
Have you identified for staff which trees would stay and which would go?
Yeah,
So, good questions. The answer is yes, to a limit. And I say that because we measure trees, so the surveyor goes out and trees and measures any tree over 8 inches in diameter or caliper inch. There are probably another 25 to 30 between 4 inches and 8 inches that are in there that are saved that aren't surveyed. It's not the standard practice to go out and survey those. You kind of can see it, but then there's also a lot of lower trees that are growing up that are caught that in the summertime will create a buffer.
Okay.
So yes, but not every 2-inch tree or buffer is surveyed. So that's what we're asking for in the variance for the landscaping. As far as the full resolutions, again, the comp plan resolution we support, the rezoning we support, understand the preliminary plat. The variance request we support for the 7.5, the 55s, and ask for some discussion and flexibility on the landscaping to meet the buffer. Staff will certainly is going to continue to work with your engineering staff and the planning staff to meet the requirements that they put in there. With the various letters, and hopefully they'll come forward through this process with a project that meets your expectations as well as our expectations.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask, are
Sure.
we able to ask you further questions?
Sure, yeah. go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna ask you, who is your target customer, consumer of these products? Homes.
Most likely they're going to be second, third time buyers, families. I mean, if the example is our Hollydale community, a lot of families, second, third time. Surprisingly, there's a lot of families with elementary age kids moving in there, but if you go to the second, third time, you're looking at high school as well. Don't like pointing an exact price range, but those in Hollydale, same school district, I don't know if we've gotten too many less than $1 million. And that's why I question where people with families can afford them, but that's not for me to decide.
Okay, thank you. And ideally, you know, the multiple builders, and attracting multiple builders, I think is great. How many builders ideally would be the goal to have?
So right now that hasn't been decided. To be honest with you, it could be one builder, but they have such a variety, could be 2 builders. In the narrative, there's 2 different builders plans shown.
Yeah.
Generally, you get more than that, and there's not enough for a builder to truly market a project. It's only 60 lots, so we can't have 5, 6, 7 builders in there because the builders can't get enough traction. So chances are it's probably going to be 1 or 2 builders to get
If I
a
could-
solid trend.
I would like to end the public.
We haven't actually opened the public forum yet. This is just the applicant giving his narrative, like giving his talk. So if
You are
members of the
correct, so
public.
there's
want to
nothing
speak-
for me to close.
Nope, not yet, but we need to begin.
All right. Don't go away.
I haven't left.
Okay, with that, I'd like to open the public hearing. And anyone here have any comments?
Yes.
All right, and please just state your name and your address if you're a resident.
Sure. My name is Fred Benkowski and I live at 6215 Hackmore Circle, which would be wherever that minute.
Okay,
Back up to that. So you said he wants to go from a 2.
hey,
to a
folks,
3, right?
folks,
At RF.
but I can only listen to one. Thanks. I'm
That
sorry. Go ahead.
means if he does that, you could put multiple home. I think it states in the code that they can have single family homes and multiple family homes. If you go to a 3,
Are you talking about density?
yeah,
Okay,
okay. So he gets 3 builders, let's say, and they buy those 3 lots. 4 lots, and this guy says, well, I'm gonna put bungalows in there.
Mhm.
Can you do that? It
We,
says multiple family.
we will note the question and once public forum is closed, then we'll give staff a chance to address any questions that came up.
And there seems to be a lot of variances, you know, I mean. We need a variance for this, we need a variance for that, the width, if you wanna see what a 65-foot lot looks like. Go to Edina, to the tear down section, see their houses. They all end up to be 51, 52, 53 feet. They need a variance because. They gotta have 3-car garages, they gotta have a little office space, they gotta have that little porch.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure about all the variances. My next question is. If you put, he's gonna put a swimming pool right next to my lot, right? So you're gonna walk down this hill, down this road, down that cul-de-sac to get to that pool. If you drive down to the site. No mother is gonna take their 5, 6-year-old kid from up here and walk down to there. She's gonna drive them. So where are they gonna park? They're either gonna park in this cul-de-sac or they're gonna park in this cul-de-sac and walk the new path to get to the pool. What time does the pool open and what time does it close? You know, am I gonna have noise? Am I gonna have things like that? He mentioned the wetland. I'm not an expert about wetlands, but you guys just redid Hackmore Road. And I believe if you check with the contractor. They got drainage going down to where he wants to fill in your wetland. I'm not sure. You'd have to check with the contractor. And the buffer zone, you're gonna add water to this. Because all the drainage from the road project all goes into that pond. So I don't know if they checked with the city about the city engineers and the contractor on the road. Because we're getting water from Medina across the street. It's underneath the street, through this culvert. The culvert ends about it right here and goes into that pond. I know that pond then drains back to Plymouth on Hackmore and 101. That's where that is. But if he's gonna build these 50-foot houses on these 65-foot lots, they're gonna be right next to each other. They're not building small houses, they're building big houses. Don't you think they should have a big lot? I mean, 80 feet isn't much. I know he wants to make money. I realize it. And I know when they sold the property that they were gonna put houses there. I knew that, but they were gonna be single family 80-foot lots. Now, we're asking for variances. And a lot of variances. It's just not 1 or 2. Every time they build a house, they're gonna have to have a variance. And the thing that I read on the website was from, it goes from the single family 2s to 3s. It says multiple family housing. So that's what concerns me.
all right.
And if he's gonna have 3 contractors in there and they're gonna buy so many lots.
All right,
Because I'm like, he's building a house.
Yep, understood. So just for the sake of time,
Yeah,
I'll give you 15 more seconds.
okay. But, and like I said, you tell me how you're gonna walk from here to there.
Probably
kids.
with my feet.
Yeah, yeah, but I don't know if mom's gonna do that.
Well, then mom has that prerogative.
Okay.
So, all right, thank you.
I got nothing other than I don't like it.
Okay, fair enough. Please state your name and your address.
Good evening. Yeah, it's Jonathan Schmidt, 6340 County Road 116. So I may have, I don't want to compete with this gentleman here, but I might have the most vested interest to be able to bring up the map again. I have the one house in that top corner lot surrounded, fully surrounded almost by this development. So we, there we are. So, we moved here about 2 years ago. Actually bought it from my father-in-law who's lived there for 30+ years, owns Hamlet Lumber. We wanted the land, we wanted the space for our kids, 2 twin daughters. And so much so that I love nature so much that I joined the Parks and Trails Commission here last November. Just because I love the city. And I can understand that there's probably not much we can do about it going in general, but I think we'll probably become good friends in this partnership because I've got a lot of questions. So I think before I get into the questions, I need to make sure that this is the appropriate time to actually ask some of the questions, but I do have about 20 questions and.
Yep, now would not be the
That's
time.
not gonna work. So what would you recommend is the best way to? have
Yeah,
those-
well, if you have 20 questions, if you want to prioritize 1 or 2,
Which I did.
and we'll do our best,
Yeah.
but really, it's not for us to answer questions, and we typically refer questions to staff. So here is what I would prefer. I would prefer that you submit your 20 questions to the city and await a response. And I will ask staff to make sure that your questions and the answers are attached to the application that gets submitted to the city council. Is that fair?
Yep. Yeah, that's fair. And so directly to city council, not to Steve here or any part of the development team.
Natalie, how would you prefer that?
Well, just to clarify, so what are, I think sending them to staff is fair, and you could even send it to, you could copy Steve, certainly. And then I would say if you have like concerns, like a few questions now can certainly be answered. You typically don't have a back and forth.
Sure.
But I do try, after that public hearings closed, I do try to address questions that I have immediate responses to. So we definitely don't want to turn down your questions, but if it is a long list,
Yeah.
it might be something better that we have time to compile that information for
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. So absolutely. So, I will just give this, and then this will at least give you guys an idea of kind of where my mind is at on some of the questions. This, like I said, we're not going through all this, right? But I just want to share these with you and get as many copies for everybody.
That's
But
fine.
nonetheless, I think, I'm also representing the neighbor to the north there, and he couldn't be here tonight. I'd say one of the biggest concerns that we have here is really the drainage. So we're very appreciative that we're keeping this wetland. It's actually absolutely beautiful and gorgeous and keep that. It's a wonderful there. Back behind here though, and you see it on the very front of that packet that I gave you. Back behind here, it's actually about a 40-foot drop. You can see there's a wetland under here. And it comes down and then it comes way up as it comes back to this. So really currently a lot of the water drains right into there, up through here, and then onto the neighbor's property. So what I guess my biggest concern is, well, for one, all the vegetation that is here, it's unfortunate that would be just gone. So, I mean, obviously there's any ways to move these further out and preserve some of the natural, the natural barrier there, I guess, would be appreciated, but it's not looking like it here. But really the concern is when it's where does water go, that typically drains off to that side, that's clear there. But then what typically brings north of here and off of my property onto this, you know, how are we accommodating to that? So if you do look on page, like I said, this will just be the main concern that I have today. If you look on page 2 there, you can see a side picture. I'm standing about right here. Looking this way, we can see how much it comes down from my property up there on the top left. And then, you know, goes back up. So, and then the other picture there on page 2 is I'm standing here at the bottom, facing this way up. So it's a hill. So what I'm curious about is, are they filling all of this in to be level? You know, is this a level plane right here? Everything gets filled in, and now our runoff is to go, I guess, where, you know, into all their backyards, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, your questions are for us, not for the applicant, okay? So if you have that question, again, feel free to submit it to staff. And the staff, I know, will get back to you in a timely manner. And I think I heard you say, are you on the Parks and Trails, or?
Yep.
And do you anticipate hearing input about this property?
Absolutely, yeah.
If I were you, I would recuse myself, because I think you have a conflict of interest.
Okay, would it be for this one topic?
Mr. Chair, the the Parks and Trails Commission purview is specifically to the park dedication. They already did make that recommendation.
Okay, good.
And I don't believe it was a conflict.
Only because I heard the gentleman say, and we're gonna have a lot of questions for you. And I'm just concerned about that.
Sure, no, I totally agree, but I think the Parks and Trails Commission, their purview is very limited in scope.
Okay. fair enough.
And so I don't think that was a conflict to your.
Good to check, and good to chat with them too, yeah, thank you. So really, I think that's one of the biggest things, and just the preservation of some of those really majestic, massive trees that are on the whole lot, not just my space. There's 2 huge ones here that you can see on the back side there. Homes are the nice Falcon family. So
Understood.
Those types of things.
We appreciate your comments.
Yeah.
We've gone well over the time. I do appreciate your comments. I'm not trying to give you the bum's rush, but it is getting late. Okay,
All right, thanks a lot.
thank you. So with that, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Mr. Chair, could I speak to the first gentleman's question about
Ours,
two-family lots?
yeah.
Okay,
About,
the two-family lots, like two-family, like for
Sure.
two-family homes, okay.
yes,
So just to clarify, the zoning district does allow for two-family homes, that is accurate. So if you look on the screen here, two-family homes have a minimum lot width requirement of 100 feet. None of these lots, I think maybe one lot had a 100-foot lot width, so they would require replatting as a single lot to do a two-family home, or for most of these lots. A, B, and I'd have to look, there might not have been a 100-foot lot width, there may be up to one is what I can recall, maybe having a 100-foot lot width. And then there is an HOA that the applicant is proposing. So as currently proposed, this is a single family development that would be under HOA covenant. I think that the applicant would have to speak to it, but I think two-family homes would be a fairly big departure from a single family HOA, but he can certainly speak to that as well.
I think I'm all on board. I don't know, do you guys need the applicant to speak to that point? Or can we just keep moving forward? That's my question. I'm sold. No two-family homes,
Well,
there's multifamily.
You can sit down for a second. I guess what I'd like to do, this is a pretty large application, and what we've done in the past, as you know, we've broken down the application into the key requests. And in this case, I think the key requests are the comp plan amendment, zoning to RSF3, the preliminary plat, and then finally the variances. Am I correct, Natalie? Okay. So what I would like to do is I'd like to break the application down into those 4 separate asks and that we focus on each one instead of just going all over and trying to get our arms around it. So I would suggest that we start with the comp plan amendment. Who would like to start, or does anyone have comments about the comp plan amendment?
I approve it.
I approve too.
So you
I don't need to
would
have any discussion. I'm in
recommend,
favor.
okay, all right, so no discussion.
Correct, I'm in favor.
Do I understand that that allows for less density per acre?
Yes.
As long as you meet the density required.
Within the MUSA overall, and this would, yes.
So I guess my only comment is that I think we've had a couple of amendments to our comp plan recently. And a plan is not really a plan if we just kind of do what we want, and, any which way. But here I do agree with staff and I am in favor of the amendment. I think that it will provide diversity in housing options across Corcoran. There's no question that Corcoran is rapidly expanding. Additionally, we're not like older cities like St. Paul and Stillwater that have housing in neighborhoods that have been built across time. So to that end, I think it is a good thing that this comp plan amendment will ensure that our growth has options, which is what I think this is offering the city, has options available for home buyers and developers. Would you like us to make motions and vote on each of the 4?
Certainly could.
So with that, I'll make a motion to approve the comp plan amendment. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Anyone want to discuss the zoning to RSF 3?
Isn't it zoning? Okay, perhaps there needs to be a clarification. Is it rezoning to RSF 2 or RSF 3?
It's rezoning to RSF 3. Currently, it's zoned RSF 2.
Yep.
And then it's also adjusting some of the verbiage in RSF 3 to account for the.
To accommodate the very low density.
Yes.
I would love to kick off. And I'm super glad to see that we have multiple members of council here tonight as well to listen. And nope, I'm just saying I'm glad you're here because I think, there's just been a lot of really important discussions happening with the city right now. And I think that if I think back to particularly maybe Jay or Mr. Tobin's comment when it was approved of the Hope Community Church development, providing opportunity for higher density in certain areas of the city will allow for lower density in others. Also the burden of proof hardship required to particularly make an adjustment to our city plan needs to be demonstrated, and other than the effectiveness to add lots and profitability and feasibility of more lots to this development, I don't see particularly hardship evidence to justify making this change to our overall city direction and strategy. I think we're in a really important time where we're setting precedents, we're setting our strategy as a city, we're setting the tone for how we are going to be adjusting. And this is not a PUD. So we have an opportunity to think really hard about this and why we would do this. And for those reasons, I particularly would like to hear if anybody is for this, and maybe I can understand that a bit more, because right now my stance would be that I don't see why, particularly other than for the developer's interest, we would move to 3.
I believe it's so that we can meet an overall density of the city. So it is not to cater to the developer. It is to cater to the fact that we are being held to a requirement regarding density. And so in order to do that on this particular lot, because we look at it as a development by development basis is how that calculation is made. So in order to meet that at this particular development, it needs to be rezoned. You can correct me if I'm
I
wrong.
don't think that's true.
So just to clarify, there isn't a hardship standard for rezoning.
Okay.
That is for variances, you're correct. There's a practical
Okay.
difficulty standard. It's a little different than hardship. It used to be hardship. Legislation was changed to change the threshold to be practical difficulties in complying with the ordinance. So the zoning ordinance amendment to RSF3, I do agree to be able to, right now, the pre-density is coming back at 2 units an acre. Granted, that could go up slightly, but a drastic change to that is not anticipated. And to move to a minimum 80-foot lot width requirement, we're talking about even lower than 2 units an acre. So I think to be able to continue to minimize deviation from our comp plan amendment while still allowing for a lower density to be had in the city within the MUSA area. I think RSF3, and it does say in the purpose of RSF3, it is intended to be the primary district for new development, new single family home development within the city. Within the MUSA. So I think it would be very difficult for them to meet density requirement with that 80-foot lot width requirement and the larger lot size requirement with RSF2.
Are we saying the overall density requirement of the city?
I'm saying right now, the comp plan amendment would allow for density at 2 to 3 units an acre. And at RSF3 standards, it's coming in at 2 units an acre. So if we move to RSF2 standards, it'll be even lower than that. So it's both here and as a city overall to be able to make sure that we are not counting our eggs before they're hatched in terms of density being granted elsewhere. That's allowing for some deviation in our plan now. And then staff does want to take a closer look at all of this with our 2050 update, but right now it's a very narrow scope.
Yeah, because I was wondering, the approval of Hope Community and these large apartments, like how is that changing our strategy and our plan as a city? And if we're saying yes to every single opportunity to build smaller lots, like how are we looking at the overall calculation and how it's fluctuating and changing as we're making these decisions?
Additional density is anticipated with Hope, very strongly anticipated. Again, I want to be careful of counting eggs before they hatch. We have not seen a final plat. I do hope that some numbers would be available for our 2050 update in terms of being able to count some of those final plats towards our calculations. I think that we have enough reason to move forward with a proposal or two coming in at 2 to 3 units an acre. But I do think we need to be very mindful as to which projects get that change at this time. Again, it's just a very narrow scope. When you start pulling at strings, sometimes they more come. So I would say that I think that the goals that I keep hearing from our city council. So we would like to allow for lower density development. I think that does that. And I would say it's very telling that even with RSF3 standards, it's coming in at 2 units an acre.
I would also like to note that the location of this particular property being at the crossroads of 2 major roadways isn't necessarily the place. I think it makes a nice transition from some of those, I don't know what we were calling them a while ago, but those established kind of rural neighborhoods. And what's across 116 from it, which is like a significant number of row homes, right? So it is in terms of making making sense transition. I think it's a place to be. If we're going to shoot for the stars and make some kind of on the line decision about where we're going to come in under 2, I don't know that this is the location to do that. In terms of the clientele that would be buying homes like that or be affording, do you know what I'm saying? Like you're at a busy intersection. And so if you're going to make that argument for a really a neighborhood with really, really wide lots and all that sort of stuff, is this the location even to put those Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, thank you. It's 9:30, so the language is not coming as eloquently. But I'm just saying, I think that where this is, the transition and the type of neighborhoods that's already surrounded, it makes sense to go to the RSF3. So I would be in support of making that amendment or that change.
Well, with the comprehensive plan amendment, I do not have any issue with rezoning to RSF3, especially since the minimums have been met or exceeded. And with that, I will make a motion to recommend rezoning to RSF.
And I would second.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye. Nay.
Nay.
I know, right? It's the double negative.
Negative.
You know?
Okay. All right, and then if we can move to the preliminary plat. Any discussion on that piece?
The only question that I had is that here is a situation where we have a road on road. And I know that that has come up before. There is the neighborhood off of Bass Lake Road, just past Cook Lake Highlands, where again, we have a road on road where, right? So and I guess I'm bringing it up in the preliminary plat just because that addresses kind of where the lots are. I believe that for future residents, it would be far more beneficial to be on the side of the road that it's platted, right? Or the side of that cul-de-sac, rather than making the homes abut Hackamore, you know what I mean? And then pushing them. So I think it makes sense. I'm just wondering if there is going to be any additional lands, like what is it gonna look like in that space between the road and the road? Because I think there's a walking trail, am I correct? Okay, right.
I think plan shows that the road, this road butts right up to it. But he could answer that.
Yeah, if you could. I know we have those big boulders. That's the neighborhood that I'm talking about, just past Corcoran, yeah. And that's kind of what shields that road on road view.
Oh, I thought we
Oh,
were
no, you're right, you're right.
Okay, all right.
So we do show extensive landscaping between that road and the trail in Hackamore. Not that it's a perfect example, because they plant them towards the end of the year. You go about a half a mile east on Hackamore 47. I've never been able to pronounce what they changed it to, so I'm gonna keep it at 47. If you go about a half mile in there in Plymouth, they have got fairly similar example. In that case, there's I think 8 homes. Our landscaping is more intensive than them, but I also think at the end of the day, it's a straight shot parallel with 60 or parallel with Hackamore. So it's 62nd too.
Yes.
Hackamore 62nd.
62nd.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we call it
First
Hackamore.
time I know
Yeah.
62nd there. So they're parallel, so I don't think there's a need to block headlights, if you will. The landscaping will have a nice buffer, but I also think if you saw that, we looked at those pictures of the houses, the front elevations of those houses are so nice that I think from Hackamore, it would be a very nice streetscape.
Okay.
So, but we do show shrubs, lower level, plus a lot of evergreen trees along.
Okay, and so that's what breaks that up. That was just my question regarding that. And I don't think I have a lot of other questions, and I'm just not sure where they fit in. As we break it down this way, and not questions, but we can get to that, I guess. Whenever we do.
Was a traffic study conducted or is that?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see any info about that.
Traffic study and infrastructure feasibility study was completed. Typically, the engineering memo will touch on that. No. Let's see here, but yeah, quick. That was where the emergency access was discussed in terms of city wanted it evaluated whether it made sense to have a connection to 116 now, but through working with Hennepin County, they are not allowing for that connection at this time. They did allow for a public emergency access. So that's shown on the west side of the project. Right here, but because, yeah, I think there really are no improvements that are offsite improvements that are required of this development because we're already updating Hackamore Road as a city. And then they don't have any direct access to County Road 116 this time. So that will fall on a development whenever the north is redeveloped, the properties to the north are redeveloped.
I bring this up to note that the public comment that was sent via email expressed concern around traffic in this area, so I also didn't read that part, so thank you.
Natalie, you wrote that one of the two wetlands would be removed. Has that been approved by the DNR?
So there's two small wetlands that I believe are gonna be a non-issue because they were farmed wetlands.
It's the one in the southwest.
Yeah, and then the southwest one, that is part, actually, we're having a discussion with engineering and our wetland specialist and the applicant tomorrow, so I don't believe that has been approved. That I think is what he was talking about in terms of any help that planning commission can provide, but it's a little out of your purview because it is up to.
It is, unfortunately,
Yeah.
sorry.
So,
Had to ask.
it's a fair question.
The one thing that I will point out, that I don't think it fits in this, and it's actually not directed really for, the applicant at all. I just wanted to highlight it, that on page 7, of the staff report, under, I don't even know what its original number is here if I flip back, but it's basically D on page 7. It indicates that the applicant indicated that the development will have a homeowners association, which will be required by the city with the proposed outlots, excuse me. And the reason that I want to bring that up is this has been a concern as we move forward trying to preserve, space. Green space is that it's actually requiring homeowners associations. And so if someone wanted to live in Corcoran and not live in a homeowners association neighborhood, they're significantly limited to where they can move. And so I just want to note it because you guys are here, that I think obviously the intent of it is wonderful. I mean, if we can preserve environmental, but if it is requiring a homeowners association, I would ask that that be something that's reconsidered. Just because HOAs can be used as a factor for exclusion in terms of home buyers. So I feel like it has been HOA heavy. So I just wanted to make that note, not for you, not that I want to change it for this particular neighborhood, but I wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, if I could comment, I don't think we have the authority to make that recommendation.
Well, the only reason I'm bringing it up is that one of you'll have better language around it. I can already tell it because you've got it in your eyes. But it's, as we move forward, we're trying to create, we're trying to tip the scales in terms of promoting and encouraging reservation of open space. But when you have that open space that's not owned by individuals because you opt for smaller lot sizes and larger open areas, it, through our city code, that is, someone has to maintain those outlots or that open space and preservation area. And by default, then that becomes a homeowners association. And so because that is something that originated through city code, that's the only reason I'm highlighting it. I'm not asking necessarily for an amendment, but I'm just continuing to highlight the fact that something that is well-intended is perhaps having an unintended consequence. A question? Is that something that would be addressed in the comp plan?
No. So if I can, Mr. Chair, to be clear, so basically the alternative would be for the applicant to draw the lot lines over completely over the wetlands. So that is an option. It's not that the city is ultimately because they're preserving these wetland spaces, they have to have an HOA. It's because they're showing them in outlots. That's the best way to protect the city's interests, is to have these HOA where, otherwise, without them having, with an outlot without an HOA, the likelihood of it going tax forfeit is very high. So that's what's triggering the HOA. Hopefully some rest assured to you, planning commissioner, is that was the applicant's intent since the concept plan to have an HOA. That was not so this is just because they're having an HOA, it's fine. So it wasn't something that, well, if you're going to do it this way, you're going to have an HOA, and then they were talking about implementing it.
Sure, it was more in the standards that we just recently passed where, so anyway, if it wasn't applicable to this one.
The PUD standards. If it
Correct,
required
yep.
open space,
So the
sure.
only reason that I'm addressing it in this case is because it happened to be an opportunity to highlight it, not because it was relative at all to the applicant in question tonight.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question to the developer?
Sure, please.
Regarding the pool, you know, and its position and its accessibility to residents and the parking is certainly a concern for a lot of people. Is there another place to put it or what, or is there why a pool versus another type of amenity? I'm curious kind of the story there.
Right.
There's a lot there, but
There, Chair and Commissioners, there is a lot there. Let's see if I can answer them. I'm not gonna answer them succinctly. I'll just answer the questions as they come into my mind. Pool versus something else. From our experience, this price point, a pool is an amenity that the homeowners like.
okay,
Okay, so that's why a pool. Different location, absolutely. The issue is, when we originally came with our sketch plan, that cul-de-sac bubble on the southeast corner, we had it smaller, so we could have had another lot or two. The city asked that it be a full-size cul-de-sac. Understand why, for emergency vehicles, so we expanded the cul-de-sac, which reduced the depth of that parcel. That parcel can no longer be built as a single-family home, so it made sense if we're gonna have an amenity lot, that one makes. That one seemed appropriate because of the size of it. Could it go somewhere else? Sure, but we'll lose a lot. And I honestly don't know what that does to density.
Outlot B is in the center of the development and it looks like it has a
Lot.
fair amount of space
Yeah.
by outlot. I think that's
Lots
outlot A.
in there.
Yeah.
That center outlot, there's a lot of topography there, getting from the roads down to the left.
I will say, if we're just addressing the parking for that pool house, it reminds me very much of a neighborhood in Plymouth that's off of Vicksburg and 55 or 55th Place. And similar, although that neighborhood is huge and their pool house for that neighborhood is right at the entrance. So it reminded me of that in terms of this, only because it's not centrally located. It is at one end of the development or the other. The way that they accommodated parking was just to have I'm gonna use the wrong word, but the curb in, right? Okay, off the street. So, but I'm reminded that we don't need to make this a huge deal, because a pool is open probably from Memorial Day to Labor Day. So 3 months out of the year, 3/4 of the year, this isn't going to be a huge deal. I guess I would be in favor. There is parking there. I do think that people will park. I think that anybody who lives probably more than 10 houses away is gonna wanna drive. So I would be in favor of kind of what staff proposed, if there's a way to create the 3 parking spots there. And then maybe bike racks, you know, let's encourage folks to bike to the. I say bike racks.
there you go. Good idea.
But anyway, that was those are my thoughts regarding parking.
I think more parking there is probably not necessary, especially if you're not supposed to drive there. It's supposed to be walkable. It's supposed to be in the neighborhood. Kids can bike. Let the kids bike.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve the preliminary plat. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay, yes, okay. Nay, you got the double negative corrected. Okay, and I think that leaves us with variances, correct? So, I guess in my view, the variance requests that are rolled into the application are the most difficult part for me. It seems that these asks are very much like those that the commission heard in the PUD context, where these items would be packaged as flexibility. My instincts tell me that they should be approved, and I indeed think that the asks make a lot of sense. But PUD flexibility is not the standard to apply here because there is no PUD. However, that is one of the things that I do appreciate about this application. The rezoning application cuts directly to what it should be. So, Natalie, I see one of your suggestions is that these variance requests should really be a zoning amendment. And I agree with that. In a bit, Natalie, I'm going to ask you to describe what that process would look like. Is it simply a request to the applicant to recast their request as a zoning ordinance amendment? Also, because it's so close to a PUD flexibility request, won't changes to the zoning ordinances need to be made anyway after the PUDs move from PUD to their underlying zoning? So I guess what I'm asking is that wouldn't this be a solution to modifying now what we would need to modify in the future anyway? Briefly, with regard to the side setbacks, I'd like to tackle one thing here is this 7.5 foot side setback. My comment on this is that if I were a homeowner, it would be good for my senses to have my property lines the same on both sides, especially when mowing. And as staff noted, this is really a distinction without a difference. But I also am not clear whether the property's boundaries are enough to show a hardship, especially since homes will still be 15 feet apart either way. So for that, Natalie, in your view, is this a zoning ordinance amendment that provides 7.5 foot side setbacks as an option, or in lieu of the current arrangement, 10 foot on garage side, 5 foot on living space side? And I guess, ultimately I could be swayed either way on that point. With respect to the garage door percentage, I agree with staff that this doesn't seem to me to meet the variance standards. It's a tall, or should I say a wide order? A little lame attempt at humor. Okay. I tried.
I got it.
For that reason, I just want to say that I do not think that this request is in response to a hardship unique to a parcel. I would support the zoning ordinance amendment. And then just my final comment on the buffer yard. This variance request seems very reasonable, and the hardship is that the plantings will not survive, and we have, I don't want to say expert testimony, but we do have expert feedback on that.
Do you want to answer his question?
So,
Albeit a
because we-
little bit convoluted.
Since we already voted on the zoning ordinance amendment, I think that I don't think we can change the vote at this point. Of the three, potentially the side setback could be addressed with an additional text amendment in our zoning ordinance amendment for the project. Again, the route the applicant has chosen was based on council feedback. So I think at this point, it would be fine for the commission to say that they support which variances are supported, which ones aren't, and it could be a recommendation for the applicant to proceed with the zoning ordinance amendment, and then council can keep that in consideration. But yeah, as far as what the zoning ordinance amendment would look like, setbacks could be addressed in RSF 3 district standards. The garage maximum would actually have to be a change to RSF 1, because that's where the architectural standards are outlined for all urban residential districts. And then the buffer yard, if that were to be a zoning ordinance amendment, that would have to be a change to our landscaping performance standards. So we would have to do a new public hearing for the garage maximum buffer yard, because that section of code was not noticed.
Well, I guess, I'm fine with the buffer yards. So, do we have any discussion on the buffer yard?
No.
I do, but that's just because of how do forests grow? You know, I mean, like, it's dense trees and
Made up in narrow trees.
I do understand that when you have mature trees, they are going to take most of the light from what it is she's planting. So I can understand the landscape comment. I just feel like so much changes when development comes in, because even the removal of trees changes the way the wind moves through there. And so it could really harm, you know, the trees that have been there for a really long time. So I just find that I would rather stick with the implementation of denying that variance.
How about
Of the
if they-
buffer yard variant, which
The,
variance?
the landscape, yeah, which is the buffer yard.
So the landscape variance, I can understand that you wouldn't want to plant a tall tree there because it's gonna try to lean away from the wooded area that's already there. But you could require understory trees there, and they're very attractive and, you know, they're high enough to be.
It would still be a variance, so because of how many overstory trees are required for a buffer yard ordinance formula.
I would, if there's a way to say, put in understories instead of overstories, I guess that would be a good solution to it, and it would be attractive. I don't know if that's possible.
Although a variance, I think that's a good idea. That's only two.
The problem with relying on existing trees also, there's a lot of ash trees that are dying right now. They're large overstory trees. We have dozens of them just on our 5-acre property that will be gone in a matter of years. They've been debarked this winter by the pileated woodpeckers.
Well, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the buffer yard variance. Can I get a second?
Is that for landscaping also?
I
Or is it
have,
just the 7.5 foot?
no, I think the 7.5 foot is the side setback.
That's a side setback.
I made
buffer
I
is the
made
landscape.
a motion to approve the variance with respect to the buffer yards. And it's based on the fact that he has a landscaping expert who said that plantings may not survive. I don't want to force someone to pay for plantings that we've been told are going to die by an expert.
Does the city have a natural expert, or is this in the engineering memo, or do we have any validation of that? Not to say it's not correct. I'm just, you know, what's our other external opinion on this? Do we have one?
We don't have a landscape architect. Staff at the city, Landform does have a landscape architect that we can get an opinion from. My understanding is that the city that the ordinance was taken from has said that there's been problems with the trees on their viability.
My concern is that we're taking the developer's opinion. And I would prefer not to do that.
So then what is the solution? For if there is, because again, I don't want to make somebody pay for something that's going to die, although that is happening regardless of whether it's because of the competition for trees, like it just sometimes happens, right? And so my understanding is that as long as the developer still has the management of the property, they're responsible for replacing that. Once it's gone to the homeowners association, then that responsibility is dispelled to replace anything that dies. Am I
Yeah, or
correct?
the property owner, so the trees that are in the buffer yard don't necessarily need to be in an outlot, they can be on a lot.
Yep.
So it'd either be the property owner, depending on how it's broken up, so it looks like some of it would be some of it's on lots, so I don't think it would be necessarily the HOA, but individual property owners required eventually to replace trees that have died.
If we deny it, are there other options for them to meet that requirement that might be more flexible, rather than planting trees where they're going to not, where they won't thrive.
So there are a couple options within the ordinance to have different, like if there's a fence, then there's less landscaping required. Also, there is some flexibility if the area has been deemed an existing wooded area, then they can be exempt from the buffer yard ordinance. It seems like it could potentially apply here. Probably better than a variance. And I think the long-term solution would be a zoning ordinance amendment to reevaluate the number of trees we're requiring in these buffer yards.
So I do have a pending motion to approve the variance. Is there a second? Hearing no second, is there someone else who's going to make a motion?
So the proposal from staff was to move forward by just saying that the existing wooded areas would qualify for buffering, correct? And then denying the variance. Okay, so I'm in favor of that one. However, I just want to I want to run something by you. We had the self-storage place right at the edge of Greenfield. And there was the question about counting landscaping that was on someone else's property as a part of this buffer zone. And I just want to make sure that all of a sudden we're not finding ourselves here in contradiction of what the outcome of that decision was.
I think we are very close.
Very close to
We're
contradicting
running into the
ourselves.
Same issue.
Okay, and will you remind us if you remember what the solution, the ultimate decision in that by council was made, or unless you guys remember?
I believe they told them to either apply for, can't remember now. I think it was either to apply for an actual variance, because maybe they brought it up too late in the application, or a zoning ordinance amendment. That was something that was discussed. I think it was discussed, but they hadn't applied for a variance when it came in front of you, and it was too late to add it in. And so instead of having council adopt something on the fly or try to provide flexibility on the fly that didn't fit within our code, they're like either apply for a variance or some kind of zoning ordinance amendment, or they need to proceed with the buffer yard as required. So yeah, it's a little tricky.
So in this scenario, for us to not contradict ourselves, what is the best course of action moving forward?
The applicant needs to plant the buffer yard as required.
Okay, so then I would make a motion to approve the two variances for the 7.5 side yard setback on either side, the garage percentage, and then deny the buffer yard variance.
Can I have one comment? If we're going to all three now.
Sure. Oh, yeah, for sure. I can pull my motion. I pull my motion for further discussion.
Okay, regarding the garage. I think it's awesome that the second story, I think that's good. Staff removed or recommended to not require or take them up on the offer of the 30-foot setback. I would say that's a public benefit. I don't know why we don't take them up on it. Yeah.
If you remember, if I can just add something, if you remember early in my presentation, I said I made a mistake. I was all confused about the 20s and 25. I really do want 25 for everything. The narrative says 30, my preference was be to stick with 25 for everything. So the 25 is a 5-foot
Increase from what's required.
from what's required. So my preference, and if I could amend my narrative, I'd say 25 feet, not 30 feet.
Oh, come on, 5 more feet.
Although to say if you took it from the front, or if you added it to the front, you're just taking it from the back. And as a resident, I think most people would prefer a larger backyard than front yard.
Okay, so we have 25 feet within our current as proposed. Okay.
So to keep things moving, I will make a motion to recommend denial of the buffer yards. Can I get a second?
Second.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. That passes.
Does that include the two variances that we're approving, or do you need to make a separate motion for that?
No, there'll be 2
Okay.
more motions coming up. I'd like to, does anyone want to make a motion on the side setback?
I would make a motion to approve the side setback to 7.5 feet, the variance. And you don't want me to throw in the garages at the same time? You want to keep them separate?
We'll keep them separate.
Throw it, okay, throw it in. All right, that's my motion. Anybody
Okay,
second?
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed,
Nay.
1 nay. Anyone want to make a motion with respect to the garage door area? I'll make a motion. I'm gonna agree with staff that this does not seem to meet the variance standard, so I'm going to make a motion to deny the garage door area percentage. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor of denial, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
So we need an affirmative motion though, to recommend approval if that was 2-3, unless I got the numbers wrong. Do you make it?
Well, I
Wait,
think it
I'm sorry,
was 3 to
Is it
2.
3-2? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was a nay.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 3 to 2 to deny the garage door area variance.
Did you vote nay?
I voted nay.
Okay, so if you voted nay to deny, for a motion to deny.
Yep.
Recommend denial, then that means that you
Are in favor of
are in
approving the
favor of
variance.
approving the variance.
I understand that.
Okay, so then it was, okay, so you.
Then what you're saying is someone needs to make an affirmative so that it can go
Yeah.
forward. So I make a motion to approve the variance for the garage percentage.
I second.
Wait, what just happened here?
I'm sorry, did
We
you?
have 3.
Yeah,
votes,
we were outnumbered.
3
Oh, we
votes
were?
to
Okay,
deny.
okay, I apologize if I
two
got the
votes
numbers wrong.
To
Yeah.
approve.
Sorry, that was my bad too. I thought I heard
I
three
thought
nays.
it was 3 say nay, so that's why I apologize.
Okay, can we take a poll? I'm a
By
nay,
hands.
You're,
nay,
Okay,
3 nays.
on the second
Two
motion now?
no,
Okay,
so I apologize.
let's go back to the first one.
Yeah, I heard 3 nays, there were only.
We were outvoted.
So it's my
We
bad.
were outvoted,
Yes, we were.
correct.
Okay, so with that, I'm gonna make a motion. I mean, oh, wait, we still have some more stuff to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait a second, Natalie, I've misplaced my row. Oh, here we go. All right, and Natalie, you removed, I think we're on 8A, you've removed, you have removed 8A, correct?
8AI, yeah, correct, and we have no other business.
Okay, no other business. We have 2 representatives here from city council. Any?
Are you done with them?
Yeah, we're all done. Thanks for coming out. Thank you for your feedback.
I'm sorry I interrupted.
That's okay. Any reports or anything? I know usually we ask questions of you.
There was a staff report, wasn't there? There's anything on the staff report you want us to talk about?
I think-
There isn't a staff report, it's just
I
a
don't
planning
think
project
there
update,
is.
Oh,
but not a council report.
I don't know if there's any.
You guys got any questions for us? Is usually what I ask you guys.
Absolutely not.
Yes.
Could I say a couple things?
Please, yeah.
I hope that the planning commission is paying attention to the things that are happening in the legislature.
Yes.
There's a lot of big deal things that are gonna have serious implications for corporate. And so if you don't know what I'm talking about, please check into it. Because there's at least 3 bills on the floor right now, and they're trying to do an omnibus bill that is really gonna change the way that development happens in this community. And so, if you have thoughts on how that impacts you, I encourage you to contact your other elected officials and make those thoughts known.
If I could, so I wrote a letter to members of city council about this. I sent them to our elected officials. I sent them to the Star Tribune. My comments are being republished on Sunday in the Star Tribune. I am very disappointed in every one of our elected officials because the only response I got from anyone was from the Star Tribune.
Oh, not even the canned response that you get when you just submit an email?
Not even the canned response.
Okay.
So essentially, the state wants to strip local government of their right to determine what their cities are going to look like moving forward. So.
Mr. Chair, I do want to clarify that when he's speaking about elected officials, he's talking about those that are on the committee. I met with Senator Limmer and I met with Representative Robbins when I was at the Capitol on Thursday. And they are both understanding of Corcoran's situation and supportive of our position.
Then tell them to respond to emails from their constituents.
Fair enough. But I just want to make sure that you're keeping a pulse on it. There's going to be another hearing that happens on Thursday. That's the next one. It was going until 3:30 today. The next hearing, it's going to go to State and City and Veterans Committee. Yeah, that's the name of the committee. That's a weird one. That's the next hearing that's happening for some of those bills. And please pay attention to it because there's going to be very serious implications for us. And they're trying to backdate it so it becomes immediate. So sometimes these bills, we have time as city staff to try and prepare.
Manage the change.
And if these changes really happen, it's going to be swift and it's going to be huge.
Is it possible, because you meet with them, I mean, they won't even return my emails. Is it possible for you to ask just a yes or no? Have they received or have they been influenced by lobbyists?
So I will say I asked, not quite that point blank, but I asked that question as it pertained to the positions. And one of the responses that I got is they're making an intentional choice to kind of distance themselves in order to maintain objectivity. That was the response that.
You know, because when I spoke with the Star Tribune reporter, he said that they acknowledged that they have been contacted and heavily lobbied by the developer lobbyists. So I'm surprised to hear this.
So I think we switched kind of the all pretense of affordable housing.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, you're exactly right. Well, you know, we're just not smart enough to govern ourselves.
Yeah. And now they're looking back, one of the big gaps in the proposals didn't deal with the realities of some of the utilities infrastructure, who pays for it, what are capacities, those sorts of things. They're now trying to talk about that. But I understand why it makes a lot of sense for some of the communities inside the 494 loop as they're trying to address it. It doesn't take into consideration those of us outside of the 494 loop and the fact that responsible development is happening. There's good discussions. People can agree or disagree with the decisions that are happening, but conscientious choices made by elected representatives or appointed representatives within our communities. Take that away for people who have no idea what's going on in Corcoran or any of our neighbors is irresponsible.
And before we adjourn, that was the best application I've read since my time here.
Well, I would put a little bit here, cheated on it.
Well, it was because I'll tell you what, it was nice having an application that just checked the boxes without asking for 100, different concessions. And I appreciated that, so.
May I ask one update of city council? What is?
First,
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, please.
just give me.
I just want an update on what is the status of the organics recycling program? Because I know that they are in discussion. And I know that one company chose to charge, right, and the other didn't, and so I just want an update, because I know the city clerk was working on that.
So I'll respond because council's
Awesome.
waiting for the same thing from me. So our staffer that was handling that action has been out of the office, and so I will be getting an update later this week and trying to provide an update. I was hoping to provide them an update at the council member or at the council meeting on Thursday. I simply don't, I'm doing the work for like 4 people right now.
Sure.
So the reality is, we hear it, I've gotten calls, it's very important. I just haven't been able to, and I don't have anyone else action on it right now.
I call
Oh,
Republic. And I've been extremely clear from a council member's position that they're wrong for what's written in the law and whatever, that as long as we have a centralized area, nobody, they can't charge the whole group. If somebody asks for containers, they can charge.
yeah.
And the person was not the person I wanted to talk to. They gave me the administrative phone number, and our administrator has to make the call. They won't talk to anybody else. So I tried as far as a council member goes. And if y'all want to know, I'll say it. I told them straight up. Curbside will not charge you. Republic does. And that's the stance right now. So
That's probably one way it's been changed.
Yeah, before we adjourn, I
Well, she
have,
had a question, and I
Oh,
interrupted her,
oh,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
All right.
I'm not sure if this is the forum, actually, so I'm gonna pass.
oh, come on.
I am,
Okay, fine, let's do it. I'm interested in thoughts, because I feel like I beat a dead horse on this every meeting, and I'm sorry. Maybe it's why I'm here. We're at such a crucial time right now, as our mayor said, over the next 12 months, the decisions we make. I'm gravely concerned about precedents, and the whole community church cast, okay? Referenced in that, you know, the precedents of prior PUDs. I'm curious what the council's perspective is, or maybe it's yours, and if this is a controversial question, you don't have to answer it. But what's the stance on, you know, what precedents, how we revert from setting some sort of precedence of accepting setbacks and variances without significant reasoning? Or like, what's the perspective on PUD applications going forward, and how are we going to work with precedents that's going to be continually building?
Either one of us can. I need more specifics, Lindsay. What precedents have we set, or do you feel?
Well, I'm just talking about setbacks.
Well, I'll give you a general answer.
Okay,
could we adjourn?
yeah, that's why maybe I paused.
Yeah, we can adjourn. I mean, I'll give you my personal opinion because I can't speak for the council.
Sure.
But PUDs are negotiated instruments. So there really is no precedence. They're all different. Everyone is different. Everyone is negotiating. And we've had discussions on variances in the past. Variances don't set precedences either. So
Okay,
I wouldn't worry about precedences as much.
we don't think there's legal risk?
Not for a PUD, no, it's so there's very limited window where a variance might set precedence if a similarly situated application in time, location, and conditions, or if it's very similar, then arguably there might be some precedent. But the city is allowed to learn from previous decisions. Say that we did it that time, it didn't work, we don't want to do it anymore. But like, for example, if one house came in and got a setback variance to put on a deck, and then another house that had the same conditions comes in 2 months later, it'd probably be a little difficult to deny that.
But PUD specifically, then
Yeah,
there's
but
no legal
PUD,
risk.
You know, there's,
Okay.
you know, we're able to negotiate public benefits and then the flexibilities on a case-by-case basis.
But even a deck variance, they have to prove a hardship, right? And there has to be a similar hardship to consider precedent.
Exactly, so it's very important that the findings of fact and the variances are unique. So to avoid setting a precedent or having something look like a precedent could be set, so.
Thank you.
April 25th. I am currently scheduled to be city council liaison. I will be in Delaware that day and unavailable. Is there anyone willing to swap days with me?
I think I can, just let me check. Or maybe not swap, I think I owe you.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah, I think I owe you.
Well, let's.
Natalie, can you speak to April's meeting at all in terms of lightness or heaviness?
I'll
Multiple.
the public hearing notice is going out this week or
Okay.
for PUD, with the Chastity property, which is off of Maple
Yep.
Hill and near
Middle.
Corcoran.
Yep.
And then, a CUP for a garage.
Okay.
Sidewall, I think is for the, right? Sidewall? Yeah.
It's like the third this year
We'll
you
put that
guys.
one
That
first,
is
and we'll
the
set ourselves
third.
up for success on that meeting.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Lantern, I'll take it.
Thank you.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
let's see, Commissioner Kazicki, am I pronouncing it?
Okay.
Kazicki. So I see that you're scheduled for the April 11th city council meeting. I'll be in attendance as well. Commissioner Brun.
Yep, I'll
do
be
you
there.
intend?
Assuming that all works, yes, I intend.
Okay. Well, with that, can I get a
Yeah.
motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We're done.
Okay.